Some people think that our heart is our most vital organ. Actually, it's not. Our brain is. Our mind is a maze, a labyrinth of experiences from birth that creates the reality we live. God designed us to thrive on earth with joy through human interaction and relationships that shape and mold us. But what happens when those interactions break us and shatter the hope and the innocence we once held? How do we find our way home? How do we pick up the pieces? Can we ever be made new? There is hope for the brokenhearted because our Savior and Creator designed us to repair. We just need to be shown the way. Join us on a journey as we learn how to take Jesus to our past, restore what was lost, and bring healing to the fractured soul.
Resistance Chicks. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle. I really wanted Leah to be here for that intro, but I couldn't wait any longer because it's already a very, very late night for Healing for the Fractured Soul. But I went ahead and played our ad for this week for the shop.resistancechicks.com strictly for the music that I felt like was very, very fitting for the Founding Fathers special edition of Healing for the Fractured Soul. So I'm super excited to be here with you guys tonight. Leah will be joining us momentarily. She is putting a roast in the pressure cooker as we speak. You know, it's very interesting. I was thinking healing for the fractured soul. I need healing for my fractured muscles, because Leah had the grand idea that I said, hey, why don't we have a little bit of extra time, which we actually didn't have the extra time, but we did when I said it. Let's go play some tennis. And Leah said, okay, let's go play tennis. Turns out we didn't really have the time to do it, but we did it anyway. And we showed up at the new tennis courts here in Miami Township. And at the new tennis courts in Miami Township, they have something that's called I don't know, it's like a fitness block or fitness something or other. I don't even know what it is, okay? Leah says, I'm ready to play tennis because like tennis is my favorite thing on planet Earth. Almost. It's up there. It's my top 10, okay? I'm ready to play. She keeps staring at me.
How can you not?
How can I not stare at you? You look just like me. Except for you're in red. We're both oh, that made it worse. You had a black dot and then I smudged it on your face.
I don't have big old real flowers.
Can you let me get my spiel out? Okay. So anyway, so we go to the tennis place and they've just installed this brand new fitness thingy-mabob. And I'm like, oh, that's neat, yada, yada, yada. And Leah's like, no, let's do it. And I'm like, let's not. So we proceed to do it. Now, if you don't know, like when you do, so I like tennis because like makes you move around, you fly and you jump and you feel like Superman because you're jumping through the air and all this, that, and the other. Cardio, fun, excitement. And yet these things are like things that you are doing, like mostly what you're doing is push-ups and crunches in various forms and squats. Push-ups, squats, and crunches in 8,000 different ways of torture. Okay? So I need healing for my fractured muscles. See, we're both wearing poly. You can't see it. All we just look is like a bright, but you can't see that we both have the same like holy polyester looking thing on. So she tortured me. That's all I'm trying to get at. So we were late today because Leah decided that it would be worth 45 minutes of torture. So then we go to play tennis because I went for fun. I didn't go for torture. So then we go to play tennis and we're playing tennis and my muscles feel like they weigh 8,000 pounds because they've been torn apart and ripped. That's what they call it. That's why I think that's what they call it when you're ripped, because you're ripped to shreds. How'd this fan end up back over here? Because I had it over there because it makes me chilly. Somebody moved it back over here. Leah likes little fans in the basement. I'm your fan. I'm your number one fan. What is this key here? Oh, I see it. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm going to read the introduction that Leah wrote for today's show because I think it best describes what we're going to get into tonight. Leah says, to celebrate the 4th of July, we will take a journey to discover the incredible sacrifices of our founding fathers that they endured not just in battle, but on the home front. 5 signers were captured by the British as traitors and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary Army, and another had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 fought and died from wounds or hardships of the Revolutionary War. Tonight, we pay homage to those sacrifices and see what we can learn from them on how to stay sound-minded during turbulent times. I'm going to sum that up. That was very beautifully written, and I'm going to sum it up like this. Our founding fathers went through, I think I can fittingly use this word, hell, to found this nation. That's why it makes a lot of people, including myself, really upset when people take our nation for granted. That the Constitution, that the American flag, that the Bill of Rights are something that can be twisted and contorted and trampled on. They can't, because these men bled and fought and died and were tortured to found the greatest nation that was ever created. And I don't say that arrogantly, it's just true. With liberty and justice and freedom for all. No other nation in the history of mankind has guaranteed those freedoms that come from God. Not a single one. So it's not arrogance to say that we have the greatest nation in the history of mankind, because no nation in the history of mankind has ever had or guaranteed such freedoms that come from God. No one has. We've always had serfdoms. We've had slavery, and you could say, oh, Michelle, but when our nation was founded, we had slavery. Our founding fathers, by and large, truly believed that slavery would die out of its own. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, included in his first draft the abolition of slavery. My best friend just went to Monticello, and I texted her and I said, because she's read The Jefferson Lies by David Barton as well. I said, maybe you'll be like Michelle, because when I went to Monticello, all I wanted to do was interrupt the stupid tour guide lying about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, which is supposedly his lover that he birthed a child with, which he did not. The bloodline actually shows that it was more than likely a cousin of his that birthed or his brother that had, or it might have just been his brother that had birthed this child with her. Well, anyway, and she was a slave. Also, he would have freed his slaves if it weren't for the fact that it was illegal to do so in Virginia at the time. So there's all these lies about Thomas Jefferson. There's all these lies about our founding fathers. But Thomas Jefferson was, and I'm hearing the pressure cooker up there. It's like, what's that fuzzy sound? Was an abolitionist to the nth degree. He wanted to see the abolition of slavery just as much as the next guy and tried to make it so. So when it comes to our nation being the greatest nation in the history of mankind, there had always been legal slavery in every nation from the history of mankind until Great Britain. To my knowledge, Great Britain and William Wilberforce were the first to abolish slavery in any area. Slavery was just a practice that had been done from the dawn of mankind. So to say that America was somehow worse than every nation because they didn't found their nation with the abolition of slavery, I would say, look at what happened within a very short period of time. For those of you that don't know, 2 of my favorite founding fathers, John Quincy Adams gets a hat of being a founding father, but technically he was a founding son. He was the son of a founding father. John Adams was a founding father, and John Quincy Adams grew up around and they say at the feet and studied at the feet of the founding fathers. The oldest founding father that we know of, I think, is Benjamin Franklin. He was considered an old guy. I think he was like 65 at the time, even though he wasn't that old. But they were all very young, in their late 20s, early 30s, very, very young, these founding fathers. So John Quincy Adams is growing up around these greats. He actually becomes president. He was the only president, to my knowledge, before or since, that went back and served in Congress after he was president. And he did so at the bequest of Plymouth, which is my favorite hometown in America, Plymouth, Massachusetts. And he goes back and he died with his boots on, as they say, because he literally died outside the halls of Congress. But he spent his entire life trying to get slavery abolished in the United States. And they sent so much so that they censored him. And they would groan when he would get up. Oh, it would like audibly, like they did it kind of like a booing, right? Because he was always trying to bring up slavery. So he found very unique ways to get around speaking about slavery in Congress, and that was by reading letters, because you could read letters. They censored what the congressmen and senators said, but they couldn't censor the reading of letters. So he read letters. Now, those of you that don't know, John Quincy Adams is also was the representative in the Amistad case. You've seen the movie with Matthew McConaughey. And so he has that. So he already has the proof of I am an abolitionist. Now, he spent his entire life in that Congress trying to abolish slavery, and he didn't see it in his lifetime. But it did happen with Abraham Lincoln. Now, as John Quincy Adams was dying and died, I guess I should say, and left. The chat is not updating over here on Rumble, so leave me a comment in the chat if you guys are still there. I want to make sure that you guys are here. The last one I have is from Sherry. I can guarantee you that Abraham Lincoln saw the boldness of John Quincy Adams. He was the president. He was a president. He grew up with the men that we counted, I say we, as in America, that we counted as the greatest, right? I can promise you that he probably, for lack of a better word, idolized him, okay? At the very minimum, looked up to him. And I truly believe that the anointing that was on John Quincy Adams came on Abraham Lincoln. And then we do see within that generation the abolition of slavery in America. And so what I would say is, instead of saying, oh, how racist, oh, how whatever America was because we had slavery at the founding of our nation, so did every other nation, by the way, every other nation. I would like to, and would, I think, more accurately look at it this way. Look at the fact that America abolished it. Look at what we did. Okay, don't look at the naysayers, right? Don't look at those that were evil, that had evil intentions. As a matter of fact, when it came to the founding of our nation and trying to get the different states to sign on to declare war, essentially, we're here. We are coming up on it's actually tomorrow is the official day that the Declaration of Independence was agreed upon. And when we look at this, how we were getting all these states to sign on, there were only 2 holdouts that refused to sign with the current state of the Declaration of Independence, including the abolition of slavery. Only 2. That should tell you something. That speaks to the heart of who America was and is, even at the founding of her nation. So why do I say all of that leading into tonight's Healing for the Fractured Soul? Because these were real people dealing with very real issues that had life and death consequences. And those very real issues that had life and death consequences, there's an old phrase that isn't used very much anymore. But when it was used at the time, it was so perfectly fitting. These are the times that try men's souls. These are the times that try men's souls. We're living in 2025 in times that are very trying to men's souls. And many of you are just struggling to combine what you know as truth from the founding fathers and from the Bible and inalienable rights and all of that with Elon Musk, Bitcoin, Space Force, like all of these modern things. Like, how do you do those 2 things together? You really can't. You don't. They don't go together. You cannot combine them. You can only view everything through the lens of God. But what happens is the devil comes to steal and to kill and to destroy. And in whatever way he can do it, whether it's 1776 or 2026, he will gnaw at your soul. He will gnaw at your life. And this is why we say this all the time, that they pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Mm-hmm. And I'll end with this, and then I got to go check on our little pressure cooker upstairs. Why is it important that those 3 things are what our founding fathers pledged? Your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor. Because those are the three things that try men's souls. Your illness in yourself or your family, your life, right? Back then, it literally meant their lives. Not very many of us are sacrificing our lives right now, although 2020 proved us wrong, and the jab also proved that wrong. There were people that literally gave their lives. Your fortune. Man, I'll tell you what, that's the one that I believe that our founding fathers were better at than we are letting go of. Because if the devil can attack your fortune, because that means you're comfortable, that means that you're okay, and what you're doing for the kingdom of God may cost you that. And for some people, like the rich young ruler, it's too much. The price is too high. And your sacred honor. For some people, this does not affect them. Benedict Arnold would be one of those people. That's a real person with a real story behind it. He married a woman. He was actually quite the soldier for the Revolutionary War. And he had won many, many battles and had done a lot of really cool things. But then he married a woman. And a lot of times that messes you up. But her dad fought for the British. And he was a turncoat. He didn't care about his sacred honor. I can't say that Benedict Arnold was seeking money or fortune or anything like that. Family is a very interesting dynamic. I don't know what made him turn. But I do know that he didn't have that sacred honor within him that we all ought to have. And, when I think about, for the past 2 weeks, I was looking back at the fact that we haven't done a healing for the fractured soul since May, which is a very long time, but we had Uncle Jack in the hospital, and then we did 2 episodes on Michael Tate. When I think about a Michael Tate, or I think about, the person that shall not be named, or just different people that we've come in contact with, and it's like, they don't care about their sacred honor. That's not a part of who they are. That's not a part of their makeup. They are looking out for themselves and what they can get out of life. And no matter who they have to squash, use, abuse, or throw under the bus in order to get that, that's what they'll get. But then that's what they'll do. Then we have our founding fathers. And when it says they were willing to lay down their sacred honor, what does that mean? Blessed are you when you are persecuted for my name's sake, and men say all manner of vile things about you. Do you know that our founding fathers to this day in 2025 are still slandered? Those are things that try men's souls. And I'll say this, and then I'll go upstairs and check the pressure cooker and let Leah take over her show. There's one thing, and Leah knows this, that gets me. And I mean gets me. It's being falsely accused. Okay? I look at the man on the cross, the thief on the cross that said, dude, you're reviling. He said this to the other thief. You're reviling this dude, but he didn't do anything. We're being punished for what we've done. I have never in my life done anything wrong and suffered a consequence for it and been upset about it. Ever. Not one time. Like deep down, and maybe like I'm throwing a temper tantrum as a child, but deep down inside, like I know, like, okay, I did this thing wrong. I deserve to be punished. But I cannot stand being lied about or falsely accused. Like it gets me. And maybe you guys are like that too. But for some reason, our founding fathers and our church fathers were able to bear up under that with a kind of character that is very rarely seen. But at the same time, what did it mean for them to be lied about, to be slandered, to this day, to have Thomas Jefferson's name ran through the mud, to say that he was a slave owner and all this? Yes, he was, but they never talk about what he did to try to abolish slavery. They never talk about the fact that he literally paid his slaves when they went fishing for their fish. What does that tell you about the character of who this man was? They don't tell you that. That's not going to be part of the history lesson. So they're lying about him. To this day, almost 250 years later, they are still sacrificing their sacred honor. That is a legacy that I truly believe, and I really, really will end with this. You know how when you are a musician or somebody that makes movies, or you write a book or something like that, and you continue to get royalties on that thing? Mm-hmm. You know what I think? I think every stinking time they lie about Thomas Jefferson, he gets a reward in heaven. And all those other guys.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that. So, I was thinking about healing for the fractured soul, and what came to my mind tonight was basically I wanted to know, not know, but I wanted to share with you guys the kind of the psychology of the founding fathers and what war did to them, what their personal sacrifices did, why did they do them? And is it worth it? Can we learn things from them? Our founding fathers pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor, and many of them lost everything. I mean, literally everything. Some of them lost their family. Have you ever wondered what happened to the 56 men? And their founding fathers are not just the men who signed the Declaration. Some signed the Declaration and others signed the Constitution. Some signed both. And then there's always the supporting cast around them, the ministers, the men who fought in the battles. We're focusing on the actual signers. These are the guys who really pushed our revolution forward. But you only usually can. How many can you name? Just put it in the chat, just off the top of your head. I want to see how many founding fathers you can name without Googling. And put, have one person put a name in the chat, another person name in the chat, and maybe we'll talk tonight about some of the founding fathers that you may not know. Of those 56 signers, 5 were captured by the British as traitors, and they were tortured before they died. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary Army. Another had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 fought and died from wounds or hardships of the Revolutionary War. They signed and pledged their fortunes and their sacred honor. What kind of men were they? 24 were lawyers or jurists, judges. 11 were merchants and had a business. 9 were farmers and large plantation owners, men of means, well-educated. But they signed the Declaration of Independence knowing full well that the penalty would be death if they were captured. Carter Braxton of Virginia was a wealthy planter and a trader. He saw his ships swept from the seas by the British Navy, and he sold his home. He sold his home and his properties to pay his debts, and he died in rags. Thomas McKean was so hounded by the British that he was forced to move his family almost constantly. He served in the Congress without pay, and his family was kept in hiding. His possessions were taken from him, and he ended up completely in poverty. I have to wonder, what does that look like? Like, you won the war, but personally, was it worth it? I think that in these times, if you guys are making sacrifices for for the Lord, if you're doing things, I want to encourage you. Many of you have, I'm thinking about you, Dr. Sherry. I know that you and your family have made sacrifices to live a different kind of life and live a life that is a patriot. And I think on Friday's show, if we have a show on Friday, at some point I want to talk about, there's a very interesting article I came across when I was looking for, all the different things that the founding fathers suffered and went through. Was that, did you know, and I've known this by a lot of my readings, historical readings. So I've known this. I've seen the letters back and forth. Men and women, friends, platonic friends wrote a lot. John Adams had platonic women friends. Thomas Jefferson had a lot of women friends that he corresponded with. And I think about, I'm going to go on a rabbit trail here for a minute. Because it's not exactly the whole topic, but I think it is. I really do. How do we find ourselves whole and complete when you were wealthy and now you don't have that wealth, when you had a position of power or you were able to trust in your income and now you don't have it anymore. The founding fathers made relationships that were much deeper than we have today. And there's something about writing to one another, sending emails, that is, you're able to get your real thoughts across, and you're not in a room. You're not, there's not that time for romantic things to go on. And so during our founding fathers era, and before that even, John Locke had a female friend that he wrote frequently. William Penn wrote a couple interesting works on Song of Solomon and Revelation that he sent to a female baroness or Lady Masham or something like that he wrote to. And so women were considered, they were trained, they were educated, and they educated their daughters, and they wanted them to be educated, and they had thoughts, and they shared their thoughts. And many women actually participated in the Revolutionary War. Many women actually fought. Many women instigated things, and many women traveled those hard treks. And they were the cooks, and they were the cleaners, and they sacrificed their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. They were women at Valley Forge. You don't talk about that. How cold, how hungry they all were. It was a time that tries men's souls for real. Thomas McKean was so hounded by the British that he was forced to move his family. Oh, we talk about that almost constantly. So vandals or soldiers or both looted the properties of Ellery, Clymer, Hall, Walton, Gwinnett, Hayward, Rutledge, and Middleton. At the Battle of Yorktown, Thomas Nelson Jr. noted that the British General Cornwallis had taken over Nelson's home for his headquarters. The owner quietly urged General George Washington to open fire on his home. His home was destroyed, and he died bankrupt. And I actually want to bring up a little bit more of an article on Thomas Nelson. And actually, Michelle, I do have, I think, is Thomas Nelson? No, that's Hart.
Where Edge of Time says, there is no greater honor than to lay down your life for a friend. Very well said.
As governor, Thomas Nelson Jr. demonstrated his revolutionary grit during a siege in Yorktown. He was leader of the Virginia militia when Thomas Jefferson stepped down as governor. The militia hadn't put up much of a fight when the British under General Earl Cornwallis invaded Virginia. But there was a thirst for a more military-minded governor, so Nelson was elected by the General Assembly in June of 1781. When he learned that the Continental Army was coming south to challenge Cornwallis, Nelson began gathering food and supplies, and he was setting it up, okay, in the Virginia countryside. I think there's not, like, battle's battle. Where are we going to set up? So we're going to pick some spots, and we're going to set up tents, and we're going to make it happen. His father, William Nelson, he and his father, William Nelson, they were important Yorktown merchants who had supported the various colonial boycotts. And that was a very big deal. To support the colonial boycotts meant, again, that was a form of treason. So they put their lives and fortunes and sacred honor on right from the get-go. Just that is the psychology of somebody who is stalwart, somebody who is courageous, and somebody who recognizes the world beyond themselves. Okay. And I have an article from William Federer that talks about why did they do this? If not for self, why?
That's good.
If not for self, why? For their kids.
Yeah.
They did. It's simple.
Their posterity.
They did it for their kids. They did it for their kids. They all did it for their kids. And in that, they did it for us. They did it for everybody who would come after them. Right. Not just their own kids. But when you use posterity, it's like my kids is kids. Yeah. And my kids is kids is kids.
My kids is kids.
My kids is kids is kids is kids.
My kids is kids.
And their cousins. Right? So they're already part of the colonial boycotts. And then Governor Nelson had been a longtime Burgess from York County in the Virginia House there. That means he was in the government before the American government. He was in the British government there, but it was American government. And he organized the militia on the eve of the war on August 2nd, 1776. He bringing them in. He's like, yo, boys, I just want you to picture that for a second. The August 2nd, 1776. Declaration of Independence is going out. He's the guy. In his town, in York County, he's going door to door. Come and fight with me.
Yeah.
Come and fight with me.
That's so good.
Come and fight with me. I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Look at this.
That's good.
Come and fight. He's the guy. He's the guy knocking on the door. He's the guy. You should all see The Patriot. If you haven't seen The Patriot, you're not American. Okay? You're just not. You're not if you have not seen The Patriot. So in that, it's just like Mel Gibson's character, right? You've got to go, and his son was going from town to town, and you got to get the guys. So in March of 1775, before the shots at Lexington and Concord started the war, Nelson told a Richmond convention of Virginia politicians that if any British troops should be landed within the county, of which he was a lieutenant, he would wait no orders. I ain't waiting. I would obey none which should forbid him to summon his militia and repel the invaders at the water's edge, according to a book, Patriot Above Prophet. Listen, I don't care, y'all. If those British guys come in my jurisdiction, I'm getting my militia together and we are going to battle. We are fighting. I don't care what anybody says. I'm doing it. Okay.
So that Patriot Above Prophet, I feel like we should make that a t-shirt.
Yes.
Yes. It's like the mantra of resistance, chicks.
Patriot Above Prophet.
Patriot Above Prophet.
I'm like legit. No, that we need that to be a t-shirt.
So
we can sell it on our store.
We're gonna work on t-shirts on our store. The other shirt that I want, I came up with this, and I know this has nothing to do with anything, but I literally need a shirt that says aversion to perversion.
Wow.
I came up with that on a show. I was alive like with the pigs or something like that. I don't remember where I was. And I was like, I need that as a t-shirt. Aversion to perversion.
I love that.
Love it. And Patriot Above Prophet. Somebody write these ideas down. I need a secretary. Can I get, I'm the secretary. Okay. So let me insert also, Corey Gray is watching.
Hey, Corey.
Corey is in Nicaragua right now. For those of you that have tuned into Revelation Red Pills, especially the first many episodes, you will not be a stranger to Corey Gray. The big surprise, and it is a big surprise, that I was telling you guys about that would come up this week is the fact that at our 100th episode tomorrow night, Wednesday, July 2nd, 1776, 2025, we're going to have Corey Gray on for our 100th episode, which we're super excited about.
Yay.
Please come prepared with your questions. We want them. We're going to go over, we're going to do a refresher. We're going to hit all the things and there's no question too tough that we will not be able to attempt to answer. So please tune in Wednesday, July 2nd for Revelation Red Pill. Now it's too many with the Revolutionary Revelation, all these things. So I'm super excited about that. Corey has been, doing a lot down in Nicaragua while he's back there. He's in the United States, but he's back right now and he's posting all these videos about, being down there again, which is super awesome.
Shows you how to open up a coconut with a machete.
He sent a video today, which I got to watch right before we went live, traveling around a traffic circle, which I hate. First of all, whoever invented traffic circles is probably in hell right now, just for that reason alone. But he's in a traffic circle and they're waiting for cows to pass. And so here come the cows and people are like honking at Corey and Corey's like, I ain't going around no cow. Dude, I got a red car. They'll like rush me. Okay. So super excited about having Corey on tomorrow night for Revelation Red Pill episode 100. So please tell all your friends. Tell everybody.
Tell everybody.
You can tell everybody. Corey's the man. He's the man. He's the man. Okay.
All right. Okay. That's
going.
awesome. Okay, so we're back over here with
Nana says, I think I missed 2 episodes total. Nana, you get the one. It doesn't matter if you only missed 2 episodes. You get the 100 episode diploma. And the diplomas are on the store. And I'll tell you guys about that at the end of tonight's show. So stick around. But we do have the diplomas available on shop.resistancechicks.com, which took me a long time getting those ready, but I'm really excited about it.
All right, so Nelson here is the Patriot Above Prophet. if it was incredible that an established commercial family should, by 1775, regard the British as invaders, his actions in the siege of Yorktown in 1781 were even more astounding. He didn't flinch when General George Washington's men, French troops, arrived and set up artillery batteries on land Nelson owned outside of town. Okay, the battle is in my front yard. And after
Could you imagine people dying in your front yard?
After he convinced Washington to ask for a truce to get his uncle out of town on the second day of the bombardment. Hey, yo.
No.
Washington.
We gotta get Uncle Jack
I
out
gotta
of
get
town.
my uncle out. Could you go just like be like, stop fighting and killing for 1 minute? I gotta get my uncle out. So he convinced George Washington to do this.
No,
Nelson guessed that there was so much damage to his uncle's house that Cornwallis and the British command would move into his own Yorktown home. When the French general, Marquis de Lafayette, asked Nelson where the Allied cannons should aim next. Guys, where do we go next? Where's our next target? I have goosebumps. And I'm going to cry. Dude, this happened like a long time ago, 250 years ago. Dude points to his own home. And he says, fire there, fire there. And he promised 5 guineas to any gunner who would hit it. Soon a burst of American shot tore into his home. I'm emotional today. I don't know what's going on. Nelson's house was hit by at least 6 balls and was severely damaged, but it survived the siege, said Chris Bryce, park ranger at the National Park Service's Yorktown battlefield. When 7,000 British soldiers put down their guns and marched off to prison of war camps near Winchester at his direction, Nelson walked away from the battlefield as governor who could say he personally defended his state. These guys were like legit. They were legit. All right. Why did they do it? We're going to go back and forth with some of these stories and read some quotes here from William Federer. The founding fathers sacrificed their prosperity for their posterity. Play on words there. After signing the Declaration of Independence, John Adams wrote to his wife, I am well aware of the toil and the blood and the treasure it will cost us to maintain this declaration. Yet through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is worth more than the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction, even although we will regret or rue it, which I trust in God we shall not. George Washington wrote in his orders July 2nd, 1776. Tomorrow. The fate of unborn millions will now depend under God on the courage and the conduct of this army. We have therefore to resolve to conquer or die. Washington convinced disgruntled officers of the Newburgh conspiracy to disband, stating May 15th, 1783, by thus determining, you will defeat the insidious designs of our enemies who are compelled to resort from open force to secret artifice. You will afford occasion for posterity to say, when speaking the glorious example you have exhibited to mankind, had this day been wanting, the world had never seen the last stage of perfection to which human nature is capable of attaining. At the conclusion of the revolution, General Washington wrote a circular letter addressed to the governors of all the states, disbanding the army, which we're really not supposed to have standing armies, so just FYI. June 14, 1783, stating, according to the system of government, the states shall adopt this moment that they will stand or fall. It is yet to be decided whether the revolution must ultimately be considered as a blessing or a curse, not to the present age alone, for with our fate will the destiny of unborn millions be involved. Colonel William Prescott, who fought at the Battle of Bunker Hill, wrote, our forefathers passed the vast Atlantic. They came over the sea. They spent their blood and their treasure that they might enjoy their liberties, both civil and religious, and transmit them to their posterity, which was them. Now, if we should give them up, can our children rise up and can call us blessed? Dr. Joseph Warren, who died at the Battle of Bunker Hill, wrote, the Suffolk Resolves, September 17, 1774. Whereas Great Britain of old persecuted and exiled our fugitive parents from their native shores. Now, why were they exiled? He's talking about the religious beliefs. These were good Christians. Now pursues us, their guiltless children, with unrelenting severity. And whereas this then savage and uncultivated desert was purchased by the blood and treasure and blood, toil and treasure and blood, lots of blood, and value and their,
double blood,
and their venerable progenitors, their ancestors. To us, they bequeathed the dear-bought inheritance, and they co-signed it upon us to transmit the glorious purchase to our own innocent, beloved offspring. The Suffolk's resolves continued. In the exertions of this important day is suspended the fate of the world and of unborn millions. You know what? I really feel like the Founding Fathers, guys, they keep saying the unborn.
Oh, yeah.
And I really believe that we miss what they were fighting for when we are not pro-life. We're supposed to be fighting for the unborn.
Yeah.
And I look at our country, and JD, look at it. This is supposed to be a
happy show.
A happy show.
It's a great show.
But I am a patriot over profit, and I'm a patriot over popularity.
Ain't that the truth?
And I do need to bring to you the one thing we always promised that we would do, and I hope that we would live up to this, is that we would not lean left, we would not lean right, but we would lean upon the word of God. And I promised myself,
amen,
that I would always call things out
balls
when they
and
needed
strikes
to be called out. And last night, JD Vance was the night before. He cast the deciding vote for the big beautiful
bill.
The vice president, as you know, does not often, very rarely, comes in to make the deciding casting vote. And I'm not gonna break down this bill, except to say the most common critique of the big beautiful bill is the inverse of what our founding fathers did. So what our founding fathers did is blow holes in their own homes, drain every last cent from their bank accounts, sometimes dying in the hands of the enemy, sometimes dying paupers. But then their kids were incredibly prosperous.
Come on.
And they did so for America took off. Not just, it almost within a couple decades of the Revolutionary War, it was just booming because all we needed was freedom and liberty to just do. That's all they were fighting for. And then things would work. Because America is the land of opportunity when you don't have all of these regulations. And you don't have big business and you don't have big bankers. This big, beautiful bill will saddle America with another $6 trillion in debt over the next 10 years. These guys went broke so that their kids would have a better life. These guys are spending, and their kids and our kids and we are going to have to pay for this. And we pay for it not necessarily through taxes.
We can't ever pay it. We won't be able to pay it because it's too big of a number to pay.
Well,
but you will pay it. You will pay for it in a sense.
We will pay for it
with inflation.
We will pay for it. It's like, if you eat a whole chocolate cake, you're going to pay for it, but you can't really pay for it, but you won't pay for it. Right. So don't do it. All right. Cause I know. Yeah. But you're going to pay for it. We're paying for it. And Donald Trump put in the Trump bucks, and we're all paying for it right now. We're all paying for it. You guys, our founding fathers learned that was what their heart was. They didn't want their kids to suffer more than them. Now, what they're saying, what they've convinced themselves of, beyond reality, is that you have to spend money to make money, and we're going to spend it so the economy can get better.
But they're not spending it and pouring it into the economy.
But that's not what it was. I mean, you can't do that. You cannot spend $6 trillion in debt to make money. That's not how this works. That's not how this works.
I know this
and
isn't
the
healing.
government doesn't make any money, by the way. I'm going to tell you what this big, beautiful bill is all about. Politicians made promises, and it's payday. Not about you. Not about me, and certainly not about our kids.
I know this isn't healing for the fractured soul, but maybe it is kind of a little bit talking about this big, beautiful bill, but it also is news, and we do have to live in reality, and this is where we are. I would like to pose my theory in all of this, and I've said this before on the show, but since this quote unquote, I just want to call it the BBB because I can't call it a big, beautiful bill. It's not. It's truly a sign of what their plan is to do to our monetary system. And what I mean by that is they don't mind. It's like when you see a town burning and you go in and you loot the store because the store is going to burn anyway. Trump and his people know that they have crashed the system, the monetary system. So we're going to have to adopt a new monetary system. This dollar bill that we all know, that has Leah's chewing gum attached to it, that we all know very well and have known our entire lives, which I'm not going to say is actually a godly thing, but this is going away. This is me. I'm going to fly it away. It's flying away. I'm really bad at flapping these wings. It's going to go away, and they're going to move us to a digital currency, and they're just going to do it. The system is going to crash, and then I truly believe that Trump's plan is to just write off all the debt, and he'll probably do it for everybody. Okay, that part's a guess, but I do believe that because then he's going to be seen like a savior, like people that owe money. We're just writing it off because that's it. The dollar bill's gone. We're not going to it's like now we're adopting a new currency, which will be digital, and you won't have a choice. You won't have voted on it. It'll just be you now. The dollar, exactly what they did with and here's how I know they're going to do this, because they did it once before. What they're going to do now is the exact same thing that they did with the creation of the Federal Reserve and taking us off the gold standard. And then when Nixon truly nixed the entire thing. But it's going to be much quicker than that. It's going to be so much quicker. And whereas there was like kind of a 60-year gap between one thing or 50-year gap, whatever, this is going to just happen like that. Okay. And they're going to trade. They're going to have you turn in this. They will confiscate your dollar bills, but they won't say it as a confiscation. They're going to be doing you a favor, right? And they're going to be giving you what they're going to tell you is this digital bank account. And you have to use it. You won't have a choice. You won't be able to. And here's how I can prove it to you that I truly believe they're going to do this, because they are doing everything that they possibly can to self-fulfill modern end times theory. So you won't be able to buy and you know what I find hilarious about this? Christians are going to be caught in a conundrum at this. And this is a Revelation Red Pill conversation. If this plays out the way that I truly believe that it's going to play out, they're going to introduce the digital currency. And then the Christians are going to go, look, war with Israel and Iran, end times. Now we have a digital currency. We can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast, end times. But here's the big quandary of that. When they establish that as fact, will they still use it? You know what I mean? Like, will people go ahead and use the digital currency that I don't think that you're going to have a choice to use or not? And then you're going to have all these end timers, these, that think that that's literally the mark of the beast and that their souls are on the line. What do you do? I think we're in for an existential spiritual crisis coming down the line, which I kind of laugh about. But it's not funny because it is really, really serious. This is Michelle's non-prophetic prediction of what's coming down the line. But I'm just saying, when it comes to this big, beautiful bill, I think Trump knows exactly what he's doing. I think he knows he's about to light the match and burn the building down. And he's just racking up these $6 trillion. He doesn't care. He has no intention of paying it back at all whatsoever. And how do I know this? Amongst the other things that I just mentioned for how I know. Trump has done this consistently throughout his career. He racks up all this debt and then declares bankruptcy. Don't have to pay it off. It's super simple. Very straightforward. Okay. He's a businessman. So he's running America's bank account and money the exact same way that he ran his. Rack it up, write it off, bankruptcy.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about John Hart. And Michelle, I do have a video up. He was from New Jersey, and his farm was destroyed. And what's interesting is he had to hide out in caves. He was in order to because he was a wanted man, and his family greatly suffered because of his patriotism.
Oh, there's Leah.
There I am.
Switch screens here real quick. One moment.
Having put his hand to the plow, he would not turn back. With 56 men of various backgrounds, temperaments, means, and abilities mutually pledged our lives, our fortunes, and sacred honor. The words were not mere platitudes. Each knowingly signed his name. Many, if not most of those men lost loved ones and homes. Many accumulated great financial debt resulting in bankruptcy, and some of them had to hide in caves.
Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings Podcast. John Hart is a little-known signer of the Declaration of Independence. In fact, he only served at the Continental Congress just long enough for him to vote on and sign the Declaration. Yet, he had a long and distinguished career in New Jersey politics for most of his adult life, both before and after signing the Declaration. This is the interesting story of John Hart. Signers of the Declaration of Independence. In fact, historians can't even agree on his exact year of birth, which is unusual for the signers. There is, in fact, a wide range of possible birth dates, and even places, for John. Most historians can agree that he was born sometime between 1706 in Stonington, Connecticut, and 1713 in Hopewell Township, Burlington County, New Jersey. The township is today part of Mercer County. Whatever his birth date or place, John was definitely baptized on December 31st, 1713, at the Maidenhead Meeting House in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. This meeting house is today the Presbyterian Church of Lawrenceville. Also known as definite facts are that John was the son of Captain Edward Hart and a grandson of John Hart. John's father was a farmer with political leanings, serving as a public assessor, justice of the peace, and as the leader of a local militia during the French and Indian War. John's grandfather was a carpenter who moved as a young man to Hopewell from Newton, Long Island, New York. After an apparently standard childhood for the times, as historians know little about what John actually did as a child, he married Deborah Scudder in 1741. Together they had 13 children.
Oh, come
Deborah
on.
died 3 years before John on October 8th, 1776.
Oh, wow.
When John died later, their youngest two children, a son named Daniel and a daughter named Deborah, were still minors. As John had previously donated some land from his front meadow to the local Baptists who were looking for a place to build a church in 1747, it came to be that a cemetery was also established on the church's new land. That cemetery is where John Hart is buried, on land he once owned. John began his political career in 1750 when he was elected to the Hunterdon County Board of Chosen Freeholders. Later, he was elected to the New Jersey Colonial Assembly in 1761, and he served on that assembly until 1771. While on the Colonial Assembly, he was appointed to the local Committee of Safety and to the Committee of Correspondence. He also became a judge on the Court of Common Pleas. He gained a reputation for impeccable honesty in everything he did. In fact, in the local area where he lived, people often called him Honest John. In 1776, the colony of New Jersey formed a revolutionary assembly, and John was elected to it. In fact, he served as its vice president. Just before June of 1776, the New Jersey delegation at the First Continental Congress was against the idea of independence from Great Britain. Because of this stance, the entire New Jersey delegation was recalled and replaced with a new one. John was one of the new delegates selected to attend the Second Continental Congress. John arrived just in time to vote in favor of and sign the Declaration of Independence, thus securing his place in American history. John served at the Second Continental Congress until August of 1776, making him one of the shorter-serving congressional members, having only arrived there in June. But in August of 1776, he was selected as Speaker of the brand new New Jersey General Assembly. Later, John became the treasury of the Council of Safety, the president of the joint meetings of the New Jersey Congress, and the commissioner of the State Loan Office. John was out of the Continental Congress by the time the Revolutionary War was in full swing, and his participation in it and the signing of the Declaration made him a marked man as far as the British Army was concerned. John had to escape the city and hide a short while in the nearby Sourland Mountains. John's farm was raided by British and Hessian troops in his absence, but they left the property intact and unharmed. When the American army captured the city of Trenton, New Jersey in December of 1776, John was able to safely go home. At one point in the war, John invited George Washington and his army to make camp on his farm. George Washington accepted the offer, and he and his army camped out on John's farm from June 22nd to 24, 1778. There were 12,000 soldiers who occupied John's fields during that time, and George Washington dined with John at least once during his stay on John's land. On November 7th, 1778, John went home from attending a session of the New Jersey Assembly in Trenton. John was supposed to only be on a short break from the assembly and to return shortly after his trip home. But 2 days after arriving at his home, he sent word to the assembly that he was too debilitated with gravel, the old-fashioned word for kidney stones, to come back to the assembly just then. In actuality, John would not return to the assembly at all, though at the time he thought his return to it was just delayed. Instead, John suffered in pain from the gravel for 6 months and then crossed over to the other side on May 11th, 1779. Depending on the accepted birth date one uses for him, this would have made John between 66 and 73 years old. John's obituary in the New Jersey Gazette reads thusly: On Tuesday the 11th instant, departed this life at his seat in Hopewell, John Hart, Esquire, the representative in General Assembly for the county of Hunterdon, and late Speaker of that House. He had served in the Assembly for many years under the former government, taken an early and active part in the present revolution, and continued to the day he was seized with his last illness, to discharge the duties of a faithful and upright patriot in the service of his country in general and the county he represented in particular. The universal approbation of his character and conduct among all ranks of people is the best testimony of his worth, and, as it must make his death regretted and lamented.
So, John Hart, I'm going to read just a little bit more from Wall Builders here. He became a gentleman farmer, acquiring a large property, and where he raised grains for his mill, a multitude of livestock, and he had, as you heard, 13 children.
He's like the Cantrells.
People said he was a natural leader, and he had in the community, in the church, and often these guys, they were the ones that get involved. His reputation, I love this, was Honest John Hart.
I love it. Honest John.
Could you imagine your last name?
Honest John.
I know, but his last name is Hart too.
Hart. It may spell a little bit different, but same thing.
Earned him the confidence and respect of those around him. Although he preferred to remain on his farm, he did answer duty's call to public service time and time again. Over the course of 29 years, he held several local and state offices. He early became interested in the cause of freedom, even helping to select New Jersey's delegates to the Stamp Act of Congress in 1765. John Hart was himself elected to the Continental Congress, where somewhere near the age of 60. Now, 60 was kind of
old back then.
He was like seriously like he was a statesman is basically what I mean at that point. He voted for the Declaration of Independence with unusual zeal. Right, that's interesting. Since the British Army was already ravaging New York at the time, he fully understood the eminent personal cost entailed by affixing his name to the Declaration of Independence, and it wasn't long before he realized those consequences. So the British Army, as we just heard, swept into New Jersey. His property was pillaged by the Hessian mercenaries, the hired guys over there from Europe. His two eldest sons were serving in the Continental Army, and his remaining children had to flee their home. John was chased from his dying wife's bedside.
Oh my gosh.
This is too hard to fathom, but I want you just to kind of look at that. You got 2 kids in there in the Army. You've got 11 kids. You're home with your wife. She's dying. But the British are coming. And he was hunted down by the British. He wandered about the countryside to avoid discovery by the British, rarely sleeping in the same place 2 nights in a row. In fact, he even had to sleep in the resting place of a large dog to avoid detection by a nearby British patrol. Several times he was forced to flee as fast as he could to save his neck, since he had been marked for vengeance by the British. John was never even tempted by the pardons offered by the British for the rebels who would recant and declare their loyalty to the crown. Eventually, he was able to return to his destroyed home in 1777 and regather his scattered family. He began to restore his farm and property, but his health was permanently broken. What are you going to eat? Nuts, berries? You know, what are you going to do? And he never fully recovered from the physical hardships of being out and exposed in the weather.
It says of strain and exposure.
Exposure out to the outside elements.
Dude.
They're not supposed to God gives you, shelter. So his farm then was later sold off to cover debts incurred during the war. There's a common theme: debts during the war, debts during the war, debts during the war. And his home was sold off. He died before the end of the war, having yet witnessed the freedom for which he sacrificed so much. We owe so much to men like John Hart, who gave his all so that future generations might live in freedom and security. I think that this is where we're at. Like, when I think about, guys, I have to tell you, I have to make the correlations. I have to make the comparisons, not correlations. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric are over in Dubai, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia with radical Islamists making billion-dollar deals. $5.5 billion. You're going to hear that till it's stuck in your head. There's a $5.5 billion resort deal with Qatar. Donald Trump is fulfilling promises that he made not to you and me, but to other donors. And Susie Wiles had to pull strings to get Trump elected, to help him get Trump elected. And that's what this big, beautiful bill is all about. The Trump family is now going to do a Trump cell phone. They did a Trump meme coin. And they are making money off of all of this.
So what do you say to the people that say, why shouldn't they?
Well, what do you say to it?
So when Paul was a tent maker,
I think it should be self-evident, but I could explain it if to those people who are.
When Paul was a tent maker,
it's hard to talk to people in a cult.
The reason why he was a tent maker is because he said, listen, I'm doing this because I don't want any of y'all to say that I was doing this for money or for gain. You know what I mean? Although y'all should be given to me, I'm doing a tent making thing because I don't want y'all to say, you're doing this just for money. Now, one can say, but you don't understand. Donald Trump doesn't even take a salary. Do you understand that salary is so small in comparison? Like, what is it, like $250,000 or something like that? Something really small. So, of course, he doesn't take a salary. Whatever.
He made $600 million last year. 1.8 on the Trump Bibles, millions on the Trump guitar.
Guys,
it's insane.
If Trump's going to make money, and I would say, and I mean this genuinely, if Trump is going to make money off of being president, and his sons are going to make money off of being president, the only time that they get to do that is when he's no longer in office.
Yeah.
And I mean that. Like, that's okay, fine. You want to find me in the middle? I'll find you in the middle. But the fact that they're making money off of it right now, actively, tells you that they aren't just doing it for the money. They're doing it for the deals that they're making with these people. It's pay for play. It's pay for play. And it's right in your face.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got on that.
All right, Michelle, I don't know if you can play this video. I think you have to go to my history. Let's go to Wall Builders. To the what's David Barton's son's name? Tim Barton. He's so cheery.
I know, he's so great.
He's way more cheery than I am when we're talking about the founding fathers.
We need to be more chipper chicken.
I love them so much because how I know they weren't perfect, but they're way more perfect than we are. Way much more better.
They are.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Jonathan and Tim down here in the library, one-room schoolhouse. It's Friday, so we've made it through another week. We've got some more stories. Yeah.
I really was needing some time at home, so now the weekend's here, I can spend more time at home.
Now we can, party, reading our books and stuff like that at home.
Buy ourselves 6 or 8 from our friends. It's great.
It's awesome. But I hope you're doing really well.
Fortunately today, we can help maybe some of that slow time go faster. And obviously, we've been praying every day.
Absolutely.
Praying that if you're a business owner, wherever you work, that it's going well, that God continues to bring blessing and provision. And so we're believing that God's going to help us navigate and get through this. But as long as we have some time, let's go back and continue to learn some moments of history where it can be helpful, beneficial for us today. We've been spending this week looking through the Revolution. We've talked about a lot of different guys who signed the Declaration. So we're kind of finishing that up now. And so we have several things we want to talk about, some more people we want to point to and help tell their story.
And in talking about the Founding Fathers, one of the things that I like to look at are the things that they did outside of the really big, really famous things. And what we have here is actually one of those things. It is a 2-volume Bible. This is one Bible, 2 volumes, now, massive.
Yeah, let's just point out for a second. Imagine having to carry this to church with you. It's a 2-volume set.
It's weighty, and it's called the Hot Press Bible because it was printed, it was designed and made for this new kind of technology called hot press, which it would heat up the ink before it applied it to the paper, which would make it last longer.
Was the idea.
Yeah, that was the idea. Whether or not it works, I don't know. But it actually works pretty well because if we open up to the inside and you actually have a whole bunch of family information from the people who owned it, which is pretty cool. You can actually see some of the dates here, 1799, 1800, these children, 1794, 1796. So a lot of kind of fun information, and Bibles are great for that, having a lot of family information. But we open it up to the title page. You can see just this awesome lithograph, this engraving, just absolutely beautiful. But if we come over here, right, the Holy Bible containing the Old and New Testament together with the Apocrypha original tongues. It was done by John Thompson and sometimes called the Thompson Bible, but you can see here from the hot press of John Thompson. However, it's done in 1798, and if we open up, you've got, before you get to the text of the Bible, you have what's called the subscribers' names list. And I mean, you've got hundreds of names here, but what is a subscriber? So
this was the early click the link to subscribe, right? This is the page.
Yeah, go to our
These
Facebook,
are your followers.
So it's actually a little bit different than what we think of the word by subscribe. Now, if you look, these are huge Bibles.
Yes.
They would have been so expensive to produce.
And printing back then, generally on a single type press, so it takes you a long time to have to put the individual letters, right, obviously spacing, everything else.
It is
typeset
a huge, time-consuming, costly endeavor.
Months at a time.
Not even a year. And so in order for people to be able to publish and produce books like this, they would have to get a lot of upfront money. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's kind of like
I got an idea. Let me go to my friends. And I'm gonna, hey, I got this idea. If you give me $20, you can have one once I do it. So really, an early idea of like a GoFundMe.
Yeah,
right.
If you give me $20, you'll get a T-shirt. I'll sign you a little card. But what they did is, right, if you subscribe to it, that means you're giving money up front, and then you'll get the book whenever it's published. What's so interesting about this, right, 1798, there are dozens of names of founding fathers in here who paid to have this book produced.
And to have it produced, it also means that not only are you going to get a copy, but you're helping fund extra copies to be done so other people can have it, which means for a founding father to have given money, not only were they going to get something, but they're supporting the project. And so to support a Bible, it gives indication that they thought this was a good project to give money to support.
What does the Bible say? Your heart is where your treasure is?
Yeah, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And
Jonathan translation.
I mean, we're going to read some Bible. Actually, we're just going to open this and we'll cover some of that. Yeah, but the idea, you're right, is if they're giving money to this project, then certainly their heart has to be on some level thinking, this is a good idea, we're going to support this Bible.
And so we have people like Thomas Jefferson actually help fund this, John Hancock, who we talked about yesterday, James Wilson, who we also talked about yesterday, Alexander Hamilton, John Dickinson, and a whole bunch more people. You can find some more people
online. A lot of notable names for sure.
But what's so cool about this is it kind of provides one of those things that in the years after the Declaration of Independence, these guys who were so influential, who were leaders, were continuing to lead. One of the guys who signed this, signer of the Declaration, his name is Thomas McKean. We actually have some documents from him, one right here. And you can see his name is signed right up there. It's almost covered by the seal, but you can see Thomas McKean. And his story is after he went, was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, a leader there, he actually later became a judge, even a governor in the state that he was in, Pennsylvania. But as judge, one of the interesting things that he did, we actually have a book here which records one of his court cases. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up and show you what happened. So it behooves you to seek the conversion, advice, and prayers of pious and good men, to be importunate at the throne of grace, and to learn the way that leadeth to happiness. May you, reflecting upon these things and pursuing the will of the great Father of light and life, be received into company and society of angels and archangels and the spirits of just men made perfect.
Wow.
And may you be qualified to enter into the joys of heaven, joys unspeakable and full of glory. Wow. So at the end of this...
I mean, that's a pretty common thing for a judge to do, right?
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Somebody sentenced to die, hey, I want you to think about your faith and make sure you're ready.
Go home, rethink your life.
Yeah, no, that's totally common. Well, actually... Right, although not common today, there's several examples back in the early days of America, founding of America, where judges did this kind of stuff, reminding people, because largely, even though not everybody was a Christian, the Christian principles were the thing largely taught to people, so everybody had heard this idea before. So you have a judge, a signer of the Declaration, who's saying, guys, before you die, make sure you're right with God so you're prepared to enter into glory. That's a really cool thought from the signer of the Declaration.
Yeah. Another one of the guys that helped fund the Bible was a guy by the name of Samuel Chase. He was a signer of the Declaration. We actually have a document signed by him.
This is
right
Chase
here,
way over here.
Way over yonder.
That's Samuel Chase. Hey, Sam.
But this is one of his documents that he signed. Has a nice little signature. But what's interesting about him is that later he actually was appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States. But he deserves, or he gets a lot of recognition because he's actually the only Supreme Court justice to have been impeached. It was actually the Jeffersonians, Jefferson's party. Samuel Chase was a part of the Federalist Party, so there was a lot of kind of animosity. Jefferson really didn't like that there were so many Federalists on the Supreme Court. Jefferson actually writes to the House of Representatives, kind of bewailing the fact that Samuel Chase is allowed to stay on the court. One of the young upstart Jeffersonians in the House says, well, then we'll just take him off. So they start these impeachment proceedings against Samuel Chase. Actually,
interesting that impeachments were political even back then.
But what's really interesting is when he got into the Senate trial, the presider over the Senate trial was the then Vice President Aaron Burr, who had actually recently shot and killed signer of the Constitution Alexander Hamilton in a duel. So there's a lot of tension in the room, to say the least. But Samuel Chase is one of his attorneys that actually got him acquitted on all of the charges, was the son of another signer of the Declaration, Francis Hopkinson.
Yeah, and we've talked about Francis Hopkinson before. Francis Hopkinson is a guy who is considered responsible for this. It is a hymn book, and you see this as Psalms of David. Francis Hopkinson was the choir director and psalm leader at his church. And what he did is took the 150 Psalms of David and put musical notation to them. He wanted his church to be able to sing the Psalms just like David had sung the Psalms from thousands of years earlier. So really a significant thought from a guy who signed the Declaration. Yes. Francis Hopkinson also is the one who helped design a number of seals, credited with the Great Seal, took claim for creating the first American flag, even though it really wasn't used largely. But nonetheless, he did a lot of things related to
really
kind of foundational principles. Yeah, foundational things in America. And so then having a hymn book, again, one of the things that we talk about, what's overlooked a lot is we don't know much of their faith and much of their story. And so we try to spend a lot of time wall builders going back, learning more of their story, their faith, their family, their accomplishments, their education, some principles about who they were and what they did. Well, this signer of the Declaration, his son, as you mentioned, is the guy that actually defends another signer,
Chase,
at the time Supreme Court Justice.
So, and then another one of the guys who helped fund this Bible was a man, he's a very famous founding father. In fact, he was one of the 3 guys who helped write the Federalist Papers. He's associated with the Constitution, but he actually never signed the Constitution or really any of the founding documents of America, except for the treaty ending the war between Great Britain.
He also is a Supreme Court justice eventually.
Yep, later.
Right, so he does get some notoriety at some point.
He's certainly a founding father.
But that's John Jay.
Yeah, John Jay. Important to say the name, huh? So, but John Jay was interesting for a number of respects because in addition to helping fund this Bible and all the other things we just mentioned, he was also one of the leading guys in the American Bible Society. Right here we actually have, it's 1816. It is the Constitution of the American Bible Society. And you can go through, you can find this online, but what's so interesting about this, at this time John Jay is the vice president, but if we open it up, it actually has a list of the officers of the American Bible Society, and it is like a who's who of founding fathers.
A lot of notable founding fathers for sure, yeah.
So this right here is the Constitution of the American Bible Society, but inside it has a list of names who were the officers of the Bible Society. And as you go through it, Tim, you'll see a lot of notable names.
And I will see those, and I'll even tell you about those. So at the top, the guy who is the kind of the president of the American Bible Society, his name is Elias Boudinot. Elias Boudinot was the president of Congress when we ended the American Revolution. So you mentioned John Jay was one of the guys who signed the Peace Treaty of Paris ending the revolution. Elias Boudinot was president of Congress when that happened. If you go down the list, what you will find is a lot of these guys were military leaders, were political leaders, were civic leaders as you go through the list of these names. But among these, so Caleb Strong was a governor, was a political leader. John Cotton Smith, Bushrod Washington, Charles Coatworth Pinckney. So guys who were very involved in the process, were involved politically. And not only are they involved in the political process and the military process through the revolution, they then become leaders and saying America needs to have a Bible society. And really, you can look up these names and find out a lot of details about them. But when you have your political, your civic, your military leaders that are saying, we need the Bible in America, or it's important enough that I'm going to serve as an officer to help make sure the Bible goes out, this is a really big deal looking back.
This is actually one of the Bibles that the American Bible Society helped produce and pass out. This one actually significantly smaller than the Hot Press Bible, much more designed for pockets.
A little easier to take that one to church with you.
This also right here is a document signed by John Jay while he is president of the American Bible Society. You can see here, it's actually a certificate for membership.
And lots of famous people have been presidents over the years, because John Quincy Adams also served on the American Bible Society. John Marshall served on the American Bible Society. So over time, a lot of people have served on the American Bible Society. And this society...
So, you know what's interesting? And I'm going to pause that there. Michelle's like, why are you playing this? We're talking about sacrifices. Because
No, I said, I was kind of asking, how does it tie in?
How does it tie in? Because you don't know sacrifice unless you know Jesus. And these men knew Jesus. Most of them did. Some of them did not. Not all the way. So the essence of what they were sacrificing for was Christian principles. And my mom has been focusing a lot on the fact that, you know, there's three attributes to God: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And I made this post earlier on Facebook. Maybe I'll just see if I can bring it up on my phone easier. When they call, that's our good buddy. The triune God, 3 in 1: Father, protector, provider, supreme judge; Son, suffering, ultimate servant, king; Holy Spirit, comforter, tangible presence, and empowerer. Some deny or hide the Spirit. Things can get weird or uncomfortable. Some deny the servant Son. They don't want to pick up their cross and deny themselves daily or put others first. Still yet others deny the holiness of the Father and want his blessings without walking in righteousness. There is a break and divide among the political right. I'm seeing the end-time dispensationalists boldly push back against charismatic kingdom now preachers. Yeah, those guys are spot on when they call out the fake prosperity gospel and the immorality of people like Paula White. The kingdom now MAGA types are staying silent about the morality, abortion, homosexuality, sexuality, and adultery, because they will lose their seat at the Trump table. Sorry, I got to edit that. If you are supposedly manifesting the kingdom now, you better be bold enough to speak truth to power, even if it costs you a spot at the table. My Bethel and Elevation worship people spend so much time in the Spirit that they are no earthly good. Their leaders let in so many wolves to eat the sheep. They are wholly inadequate at using discernment. They spend too much time in their feelings and are incredibly self-focused. But at least they do not deny the Spirit and the gifts of the Spirit. The end times dispensationalists, mostly Baptists, spend too much time arguing doctrine and trying to decide what headlines mean Jesus is coming back soon, so that they are no earthly good. However, they embrace the suffering servant and are trying to honor God the Father. We need to embrace all three aspects of God. Some things are really hard, and we go through trials, and we carry one another's burdens. Sometimes we're on a mountain, spiritual mountaintop, and the Holy Spirit is flowing in a mighty, powerful way. And sometimes we embrace the discipline of holiness and righteousness. It is all about expanding the kingdom of God by loving one another as he loved us. The sacrifices that our founding fathers made did so because they had read about a man who made the ultimate sacrifice. His name was Jesus. And they put these Bibles out because they wanted people to know about God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And they preached about God. They all preached about God. And it's a non-starting point for people to say, I didn't elect a pastor. Well, What about John Adams or John Quincy Adams, who was president of the Bible Society, or John Jay, president of the Bible Society, or Thomas McKean here? I'm going to talk about a gentleman who he was of Delaware, was harassed mercilessly. His family went into hiding during the war. They had to move his family 5 times. He had to move his family. He served in Congress without pay, and he died in poverty. Why did he do it? He did it because he opened the Bible. Thomas McKean was the judge we heard about. He was one of the people that they were reading about. He was the one where they read the postscript about the angels and God and all that cool stuff. Okay, that was Thomas McKean. And when you look at the lives of the founders, he was once McKean was appointed to the office of the president of Delaware in 1777. He was targeted by the British, and the British captured John McKinley, the previous president. He had to move his family 5 times. The British had already captured the guy before him, and he said, I'll take the job anyways. I'll take the job anyways. And he's living from place to place, and he died in poverty. And I know a lot of you guys think, a lot of people are taught in history, oh my gosh, the founding fathers, they were just slave owners. Even the slave owners kind of lost everything. Okay. One that I'm not happy about very much is Dolly Madison. A lot of people like Dolly Madison, but she enjoyed her slaves. And her husband, James Madison, actually asked her to not sell the slaves when he died, but she did. And she sold some to pay off debts, and I just don't like her.
They were in a lot of debt. I mean, Dolly Madison pretty much ended up she had to sell the slaves. She had nothing.
Well, you didn't. She didn't have anything. You're right. She didn't, but she lived a very good life.
Right. Yes, she
until
did.
then. And James Madison wanted to get rid of slaves. Okay, a couple more of these guys. Thomas Hayward Jr. of South Carolina was a signer of both the Declaration and the Articles of Confederation. Hayward drew the ire of the British when, as a circuit court judge, he presided over the trial of several loyalists who were found guilty of treason. The prisoners were summarily executed in full view of the British troops. Now, that's intense.
Wow.
And in 1779, he joined the South Carolina militia as a captain of artillery. Hayward's compatriot in South Carolina delegation, Edward Rutledge, also served in the state militia. At age 26, Rutledge was the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence. He's 26 years old. After returning home from attending the Second Continental Congress in 1777, he joined the militia as captain of an artillery battalion. Both Hayward and Rutledge aided their country in the Battle of Port Royal Island, where they helped General Moultrie defeat the British Major William Gardiner and his troops. Arthur Middleton, the last of the South Carolina delegation who served in the militia, took up arms against the British during the siege of Charleston in 1780. His fellow signers, Hayward and Rutledge, fought in that battle as well. Upon the surrender of Charleston, all 3 men were captured by the British and were sent to a prison in St. Augustine, Florida, which was reserved for people the British thought were particularly dangerous. They were held there, and I guess is that the same? Is that the fort there? I think so. They were held there for almost a year before being released. En route to Philadelphia for a prisoner exchange in July of 1781, Hayward almost drowned. He survived his fall overboard by clinging to the ship's rudder until he could be rescued. During the British occupation of Charleston, Commandant Nisbet Balfour ordered the seizure of many estates of Charleston, including those owned by Hayward and Middleton. During his imprisonment, Hayward's wife died at home, and his estate and property were heavily damaged. Rutherford's estate was left intact, but his family had to sell many of their belongings in order to make the trip to Philadelphia to reunite with him after his release. Middleton's estate was left relatively untouched, but his collection of rare paintings was destroyed during the British occupation of his home. Richard Stockton, a member of the New Jersey delegation, Richard Stockton, had his estate commandeered by the British for use as a headquarters. As they left, British troops burned all of his personal things. His library, his private papers. I mean, imagine your letters, the books you've got, the furniture your family's collected, all of his clothes. They just burned it all. Though Stockton was in hiding at the time, he ultimately did not escape capture. A traitor led the British to his position. This is hard. In November of 1776, and he was held captive in Amboy, New Jersey, and was then sent to New York City, where he was imprisoned in jail reserved for common criminals. Incensed by his treatment, Congress worked with British General William Howe to obtain his release. George Walton. Because of his small build and stature, George Walton was thought to be the youngest of the signers' declaration. He was actually in his mid-30s. He hailed from Georgia and served as a colonel in the 1st Regiment of the State Militia in 1778. During the siege of Savannah, a cannonball broke his leg. You know, you wonder about those cannonballs, and we've seen The Patriot, and I'm not going to play the clip, and Michelle, I always fast forward, Michelle watches the guy's head get, and she thinks that that's cinema magic or something. A cannonball to the leg, which led to his being captured. He was held captive for 9 months and was released in the early fall of 1779 in a prisoner exchange for a British Navy captain. At the same time, Walton was held prisoner. His wife, Dorothy, was captured. His wife was captured by the British, and she was imprisoned on an island in the West Indies. What? You're taking me on some sort of sea shanty to an island? She was freed after prisoner exchange. During the Walton's confinement, the British ransacked their home. George Clymer. The British troops destroyed the home of George Clymer in Pennsylvania in September of 1777 when they captured Philadelphia. Though his home was outside of the city, it was right in the middle of the path of the British march. American loyalists pointed out to the British homes belonging to patriots, which of course included Clymer's estate. Clymer also contributed to the war monetarily. He converted his entire fortune into continental currency, a risky move considering the likelihood that the currency would be rendered worthless. He also told wealthy friends to contribute to the American cause. Now, Robert Morris was a very interesting character. I don't really want to go into him too much. He was into finance, and he financed the revolution. He was definitely a business guy. Maybe he was a Trump guy, but he actually ended up losing everything. He was a delegate from Pennsylvania. Robert Morris helped to ensure Washington's victory at Yorktown by using his own credit to obtain the supplies necessary to defeat the British. He spent more than $1 million, not adjusted for inflation, of his own money to accomplish this. While serving as superintendent of finance of the United States, Morris regularly used his own financial resources to obtain much-needed supplies. Using his own funds, for example, he purchased 1,000 barrels of flour for Washington's men in late spring of 1778. That's awesome. So maybe a little bit better than George Washington. But Robert Morris actually was kind of a little bit of a philanderer, shall we say. He led a very eclectic life. Having affairs and things like that. But he did finance. He's kind of the unsung financier of the Revolutionary War. And he did put his money where his mouth was. And he died in debt. But that was more land speculation later on. Lewis Morris of New York served as a major general in the state militia. Morris devoted himself to recruiting men to serve in the militia and to help keep supplies up, which was a constant problem, obviously. For almost the entire length of the war, the British occupied his home.
Oh, wow.
In Morrisania, and used it for their headquarters. This forced Morris to live off of his close friends and associates until the war ended in 1783. John Hancock is a big signature at the end of the Declaration. He was put in command of approximately 6,000 men during the Rhode Island campaign. That campaign was ultimately unsuccessful because the French failed to carry out their end of the bargain. Caesar Rodney, he served in the Delaware militia as well, attaining the rank of Brigadier General. Rodney famously rode on horseback straight from Dover to Philadelphia to cast his vote in favor of declaring independence. The Delaware delegation was split. He was with his men in the field during the brutal winter of 1776. He helped squash the uprising in Delaware, where there were a large number of loyalists within the state, and helped in George Washington's effort to defend Philadelphia from being taken by the British. Carter Braxton of Virginia's delegation accumulated massive personal debts, helping the Americans' effort for the war. He loaned 10,000 pounds sterling to Congress, which was never repaid.
Wow.
He also spent much of his wealth outfitting American ships so that they could carry more cargo. Due to the British capture of some of his vessels and others being lost out in the seas, he suffered greatly financially. These accumulated losses left him bankrupt.
So can I just point something out? Like I'm certain that you can probably find Carter Braxton's posterity somewhere, right? You want to talk about reparations? Okay, you know what? The dude literally lent this money for the war.
Yeah, let's do it.
He should be paid back 10,000 sterling pounds. I don't know how much that is, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, so as Leah's reading these names, they're not just names, they're not just little quibbits. And like, it's hard to have someone's life, fortune, and sacred honor summed up in a little tiny paragraph of sacrifice. And I just think, you know, I had my own, first of all, I understand that hormones are responsible for a lot of things. And I was driving to the grocery store the other night and I saw this absolutely beautiful sky. The sunset was gorgeous. It was pink. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, God, I just love you. I praise you. I was like, God, I thank you for the gift of just even being alive. I'm like, I don't even care what my life is like. I don't care about any problems. Like I am repenting for ever, you know, being upset about anything. Like I'm just in a mood. I'm like, oh my gosh, God, you're so beautiful. You're so wonderful and all this, that, and the other. And then I get to the new Kroger, which I hate, this new Kroger. And I don't ever want to shop there again as long as I live because it's so big. It's literally like an airport and the grocery store. And I show up and they have the old set of doors. And I walk to go in them and they don't open. And I was like, dude. So, and there's no sign. There's no sign that says these doors are going to be closed. So then I go to the next set of doors down a ways and they don't open. And I'm like, dude, why are these doors not opening? And then I go to finally walk all the way down to the new opening. I don't even want to be here at this Kroger. And I get in and then I got to walk all the way back to the other side where the produce actually is, which was all the thing I went for. Let me finish. The only thing I went for was this produce. And I'm on the phone with Leah and she thought I was serious. Although I was like, Leah, I was telling you about this sunset and how I'm praising God. And then I was like, and then these doors don't open. And I'm like, I don't even want to live anymore. I don't even want to be here. I'm just done. I'm done with life. I'm done with everything because Kroger's doors won't open. Okay. And I'm like, okay, that escalated quickly. And yet I think about these guys and the sacrifices that they made. And, you know, everybody, you know, wants to say we're living in the end times.
Yeah.
These are the last days. This is it. And I want to make a comparison here, and please hear me. And this is not Revelation Red Pill, but it applies. Most of y'all thinking that it's the end times are saying it's the end times. The doors won't open. That's it. Doors won't open. These founding fathers had every reason, if modern end times theory had been alive, aka dispensationalism, had been a thing, which it wasn't at the time of our founding fathers, they would have said, well, we got wars, we got rumors of wars. I am out here being persecuted for my faith. They are chasing after me. They're not only wanting to imprison me, but they are taking up quarters in my house. My wife is dying. They're conscripting my kids. You know, all these different things. They're taking my fortune, like literally dying of exposure and all this, that, and the other. And they had every reason to say, that's it. It's the end. And you know what? They didn't. You know why? Because they believed it was just the beginning. Yeah. They believed that they were expanding the kingdom of God and they believed in something. And so when we're talking about the healing for the fractured soul, man, these guys didn't just have their souls fractured, man, they had their souls broken time and time and time again. And yet the answer for us in 2025, when the daggum doors don't open at Kroger, and for these guys who are out there in exposure, laying down their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor, is the same answer to heal the soul. And that is Jesus. I want to read a couple of comments before Leah moves on. Sammy says, yes, The Patriot was an epic movie. They weren't kidding when they said that they were pledging their lives and fortunes when they were signing the Declaration. He says, makes me wonder about John D. Rockefeller, who abused that man, that he would become such an old prude to ever say, I want a nation of workers, not thinkers, ruining our education and medical institutions. He says, been going through some free courses at Hillsdale College online about the Federalist Papers. So far, a must take course. And Mark says they have a book about 2 inches thick of nothing but famous sermons during the Revolutionary period. It is fascinating. That's awesome.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. We're going to do a little highlight here on a man named Francis Lewis. It is unlikely that many Americans today, even many New Yorkers, have heard of Francis Lewis, even though he is one of only 16 to have signed the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. He seems to not have had much impact on the political direction or the constitutional development of the country. Still, he was reputed by a 19th century biographer to have been admired by his contemporaries. Today, Francis Lewis High School in Queens, New York, preserves his name. Lewis was born in March 21st, 1713 in Wales. He was orphaned by age 5 and raised by an aunt. After attending school in Scotland and England, he became an apprentice at a mercantile house in London. At the age of 21, he inherited property from his father's estate, sold it, converted the proceeds to merchandise, and sailed for New York in 1734. He left a portion of the merchandise for his business partner, Edward Ansley, and took the rest to Philadelphia to sell. He returned to New York in 1736. Having become a successful businessman with contracts in several countries, he was entrusted by the British military with a contract to supply uniforms during the French and Indian War. In 1756, the first official year of that war, Lewis was at Fort Oswego in upstate New York. During his stay, the French and Indian allies attacked in August. Lewis was standing next to the English commander when the latter was killed in battle. The British surrendered the fort to the French, and Lewis was captured and eventually taken to France. It has been written that he was kept in a box or a crate during that voyage.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What size box? Crate.
His horror and captivity ended through a prisoner exchange when the peace was achieved in 1763. Then he went back to New York. The British government awarded him 5,000 acres in New York. I'm sure that many people live on old Lewis land as compensation for the lost years of his life. Lewis, could you imagine, like, people from our military don't get anything?
No.
Lewis once more turned his attention to business, and he quickly prospered. With his large fortune firmly established, he retired from running his businesses and became active in politics. When Parliament passed the Stamp Act in 1765, he changed his pro-royalist sentiments and joined the Stamp Act Congress organized to protest the tax.
Let's go.
Therefore, his political activism deepened. That same year, he was a founding member of the local chapter of the Sons of Liberty, one of the loosely connected collection around the colonies of silk-stockinged rabble-rousers. You guys know who they are. When the crisis between Britain and her colonies began to worsen, Lewis joined the Committee of 51. Organized in New York in 1774 to protest the closing of the port of Boston to commerce. When the committee was succeeded by the Committee of 60 in the 1775 to enforce the colony's trade embargo against the British goods, which had been adopted by the First Continental Congress, Lewis joined that as well. That committee was replaced in short order by the Committee of 100, which directed the colonist program against the Parliament until the first New York Provincial Assembly met and took over in 1775. In Congress, he signed the Olive Branch Petition in July of 1775. That was written by John Dickinson in Pennsylvania and was a last attempt to say to the moderates in the Congress to avert war. The petition assured King George of the Americans' loyalty to him. Dickinson pleaded with the king to create a more equitable and permanent political trade agreement between Britain and her colonies. And that obviously didn't work. And the king didn't even read it. So there you go. How many of you have ever written this big long letter and you're like, and then you send it away? They're not gonna read it. It's just
or text
the
or
bad
text
guys.
message.
The bad guys aren't reading it, guys.
Well, that's why they tell you actually
it's for yourself.
You need to just write these things for yourself. You don't have to actually have to send them
Right. Yeah.
away. Sometimes it's better not to even send them.
Exactly. So as a final break from Britain loomed, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, and the vote on Richard Henry Lee's resolution to declare independence on July 2nd, 1776 was approved by 12 delegates. Lewis and the rest of the New York delegates had to abstain because they had not yet received instructions. You guys know that? Remember that one? So he's like, we're not allowed to vote because why? They had to represent the people. They couldn't just vote their conscience. Lewis used his wealth and business acumen to assist the new country. He is estimated to have been the 5th wealthiest signer of the Declaration.
Oh, wow.
Before and during the war, he was instrumental in procuring uniforms, arms, supplies for the Continental Army, both on his own account and through his administrative talents. Think of it. He fought for the British. The British gave him wealth, and then he used that wealth to fight the British. He strongly sided with General George Washington against the latter's critics on the Conway Cabal, who sought to replace Washington with the politically popular but militarily incompetent General Horatio Gates. Lewis's service in the Congress also include approving the Articles of Confederation in 1777 and being chairman of the Continental Board of Admiralty. Despite his wealth and his involvement in public affairs at an exceptional time, Lewis was no stranger to personal tragedy. Already mentioned was his loss. He had lost both his parents as a child. He also didn't have any siblings. Only 3 of his 7 children reached adulthood.
Wow,
So he lost 4 children. Perhaps most traumatic was the fate that befell his wife. Lewis was married to Elizabeth Ansley, his business partner's sister, in 1745. While Lewis was away in 1776, his house in Whitestone, in today's Queens, New York, was destroyed by the British after the Battle of Brooklyn. Soldiers from a light cavalry troop pillaged the house, and a warship then opened fire.
No.
Worse, the British took his wife prisoner and held her for 2 years.
Get out of town. I ain't never heard that story.
Historical sources aver that the conditions of her captivity were inhumane in that the British denied her a bed,
Oh my God.
a change of clothing, or adequate food for over several weeks. Eventually, General Washington was apprised of her situation. He thereupon ordered the seizure of the wife of the British paymaster general and the wife of the British attorney general from Pennsylvania. Both were to be held under the same conditions as Elizabeth Lewis.
I ain't never heard this story.
A prisoner exchange was then arranged,
Oh my gosh.
and Elizabeth was released in 1778. She returned to be with her husband in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, her captivity had so ravaged her health that she died
Oh,
not long
man.
after in June 1779. This episode illustrates the suffering that befell families on both sides of what was, in essence, a civil war. How do you treat a woman that way in war? If you're going to take her captive, you can provide her with food. You could give her a bed. You could give her some clothing.
I'm more surprised with General Washington.
It often was a war between neighbors, former friends, and families. Francis Lewis retired from public service in 1781. Thereafter, he lived a life of leisure with books and plenty of family time with his 2 sons and their children.
Wow.
A daughter had married an English naval officer and left North America, never to return.
How do you do that to your
A
dad?
none too rare sad consequence of the war, and one that actually befell Benjamin Franklin's family as well. He died December 31st, 1802.
Wow.
Just really intense life stories. Like, you can't even imagine that. You know, your wife is captive.
2 years.
They don't feed her. They don't give her clothes. They don't put her on a bed. They starved her to death, and they basically starved your wife to death. I don't know how you come out from that and can keep living, but for some sort of faith in God.
Yeah.
And to that, I'll talk a little bit about Thomas Jefferson and what he went through with the loss of his wife. Thomas Jefferson suffered mentally a lot. He was a Christian. If many of you don't know this, but he suffered with believing in God, trusting in God, because he lost both his wife and his child. I'm going to read from a person who went through some loss and wrote about it in respect with Thomas Jefferson. But what if you lose your spouse at a very early age? That is not supposed to happen. The 3rd president of the United States knew about this when he was 39. Thomas Jefferson's 33-year-old wife, Martha, died. The couple had been married just 10 years. Both of the Jeffersons enjoyed reading aloud to each other. One of their favorite books was The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman, by Lawrence Sterne. Martha was trying to read a portion to her husband as she lay dying, trying to convey her feelings about the separation soon coming. When she became too weak to speak the words, she began to write them. Time wastes too fast. Every letter I trace tells me with what rapidity life follows my pen. The days and hours of it are flying over our heads like clouds of the windy day, never to return more. Everything else presses on. Even when even this becomes too difficult, her husband picked up the pen and completed the passage from memory. And every time I kiss thy hand to bid adieu, every absence which follows it, are preludes to that eternal separation which we are shortly to make. Jefferson is reported to have fainted when his wife died.
Wow.
He was carried from her bed. For 3 weeks, he didn't speak or leave his room. Only his daughter Patsy was finally able to bring him out of himself. She later wrote, "He walked almost incessantly night and day, lying down only when nature was completely exhausted on a pallet that had been brought in during his long fainting fit. When at last he left his room, he rode out, and from that time he was incessantly on horseback, rambling about on the least frequented roads just as often through the woods, and those melancholy rambles. I was his constant companion, a solitary witness to many violent bursts of grief." For the rest of his life, Jefferson kept the small piece of paper on which he and his wife had their last literary dialogue. The paper and a lock of his wife's hair, captured in an engraved locket he had made for the purpose, remained in a secret drawer next to his bed. Jefferson never remarried. I do not believe he had relations with Sally Hemings.
Impossible.
Thomas Jefferson became president 19 years after Martha's death. And we know that he died on July 4th.
1826.
Yeah.
That's just so amazing. It's literally exactly to the day, right? Exactly to the day, which also I think goes to stand that, you know, how John Adams had thought it might be July 2nd, that would be the day that would be celebrated. Well, both John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died on the same day, which was the 4th of July, which is so amazing. Literally 50 years.
Yeah.
50 exact years from the signing of the Declaration.
It's amazing.
They both died on the same day.
God.
They were best friends and they were estranged. We're going to tell this story on Friday probably because it's our favorite story to tell. It's the best story. It's literally, I think it's the best story out of the Revolution next to Bulletproof George Washington is the greatest story.
Back to Thomas Jefferson and his daughter. I'm going to read to you, just kind of give you an idea of his heart. Shortly after his wife's death, Jefferson's duties as member of the Continental Congress required that he leave Monticello and that he entrust the care of his 3 living children, Martha, Patsy, Mary, and Lucy, to others. In November of 1783, the Continental Congress was meeting in Annapolis, Maryland. Jefferson took time out of his duties to write his oldest daughter, 11-year-old Patsy, who had been left in the care of Mrs. Thomas Hopkins, the mother of a friend. Much has changed since the time that Jefferson wrote to his young daughter. Our world would be foreign to him, as he would to us. However, Jefferson's letters reveal that the trials and tribulations of parenthood remain constant. My dear Patsy, November 28, 1783. After 4 days' journey, I arrived here without any accident and in as good health as I had left Philadelphia. The conviction that you would be more improved in the situation I had placed you than if still with me has solaced me with my parting with you, which my love for you had rendered a difficult thing. The acquirements which I hope you will make under the tutors I have provided for you will render you more worthy of my love. And if you cannot increase it, they will prevent its diminution. Consider the good lady who is taking you under her roof as your mother, as the only person to whom, since the loss with which heaven has pleased to afflict you, you can now look up to.
Wow.
He wrote that to an 11-year-old. With respect to the distribution of your time, the following is what I should approve. From 8 to 10 o'clock, practice music. From 10 to 1, dance one day and draw another. That's a lot of dancing.
That's 3 hours of dancing, man. Are you supposed to eat in there somewhere?
From 1 to 2, draw on the day you dance and write a letter the next day. From 3 to 4, read French. From 4 to 5, exercise yourself in music. From 5 till bedtime, read English and write, etc.
I thought we were doing music already. That's a lot of music.
Yeah. You get a lot of music.
Wow.
I expect you will write me almost every post, inform me what books you read, what tunes you have learned, and enclose me your best copy of every lesson in drawing. Write also 1 letter a week, either to your Aunt Epps, your Aunt Skipworth, or your Aunt Carr, or the little lady with whom I now enclose a letter. Take care that you never spell a word wrong.
Oh, wow.
Always before you write a word, consider how it is spelt, and if you do not remember it, turn to a dictionary. It produces great praise to a lady to spell well. If you love me, then strive to be good under every situation and to all living creatures, and to acquire those accomplishments which I have put in your power, and which will go far towards ensuring you the warmest love of your affectionate father.
Stop it. So I want you to note something so interesting there that our founding fathers had that, we really just don't see today. And
it's obviously a major education. That's home education. Right,
it is a father's not just love for their child, but love for their future. What's going to, so we have a hard time filtering that through modern society and what a female can and should be. But at that time, he was trying to make his daughter the best of what a young lady would turn out to be, and the accomplishments with which it was important for a young lady to have.
Be able to write and play music was a very big deal.
It was it was very, very big deal.
Because she wasn't going to have to work.
And to be able to read.
But she had to be able to read and be and that's why, and you missed it when I talked about it, there's an article that I'm going to talk about on Friday, the platonic friendships and relationships of the founding fathers with other women. Constantly writing other women.
Well, it reminds me of John Locke and Lady Masham. We've talked about that before on our show. It's nearly...
I said William Penn earlier, it's John Locke. Sorry.
It's nigh impossible to see that today in the perverse world that we live in, and in a world post Alfred Kinsey.
Yeah.
Michelle, are you saying that affairs didn't happen? No, absolutely they happened. They did. Did they happen amongst our founding fathers? Probably way more rare than in the rest of society. But I also think that the rest of society really didn't have affairs either. When you look at like a Thomas Jefferson and they want to accuse him of having had a relations with his slave, Sally Hemings, you don't have that level of grief that your daughter is writing about with a wife that you could have an affair on. And that's just flat out. Like, if you can have an affair on a wife, you don't care that much when she dies.
Well, they weren't saying that Sally Hemings was an affair. They're saying that Sally Hemings came after her wife died.
What I'm saying is that level of devotion, to me, it's an affair, because when you look at Thomas Jefferson and you look at the devotion, he kept the lock of hair. He kept that level, like, as far as Thomas Jefferson was concerned, and forgive me if I was getting that wrong with the affair part, but I count it as an affair because Thomas Jefferson had devoted his life to his wife. If he would have gotten married, he would have gotten married. But whether it's an affair or sleeping outside of marriage, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, it was... And it was illegal, by the way, at the time to even be married to a black person. So whatever you want to call that, you don't have that level of devotion to your wife and then sully that memory by doing something like that.
So at the end of that letter, he says, "Keep my letters and read them at times, that you may always have present in your mind those things which will endear you to me."
That's very interesting that he's constantly, I think, again, in light of modern translation, people might find these
remember me, think about me,
but he keeps saying, like, make you worthy of my love and my affection and all this, that, and the other. And I actually in 1776 time, I don't have a problem with this at all.
So, my dear Patsy, I hope before this to have received letters from you regularly and weekly by post, and also to have had a letter to forward from you to one of your aunts, as I desired in my letter November 28th. I'm afraid you do not comply with my desires expressed in that letter. Your not writing to me every week is one instance, and your having never sent me any of your copies of Mr. Sminneteer's drawing lessons is another. I shall be very much mortified and disappointed if you become inattentive to my wishes, and particularly to the directions of that letter, which I meant for your principal guide. I omitted in that letter to advise you on the subject of dress, which I know you are a little apt to neglect. I do not wish you to be gaily clothed at this time of life, but that your wear should be fine of its kind. But above all things, that, and at times, let your clothes be neat, whole, and properly put on. Do not fancy you must wear them till the dirt is visible to the eye. Some ladies think they may be loose and negligent in their dress in the morning, but be you, from the moment you rise to the moment you go to bed, as cleanly and properly dressed as at the hours of dinner or tea. A lady who has been seen as a sloven in the morning will never efface the impression she has made, with all the dress and pageantry she can afterwards involve herself in. Nothing is so disgusting to men as to want the cleanliness and delicacy in women. I hope, therefore, the moment you rise from bed, your first work will be to dress yourself in such style as you may be seen by any gentleman without his being able to discover a pin amiss, or any other circumstance of neatness wanting. Present my compliments to Mrs. Hopkins, whose health and happiness I have much at heart. I hope you are obedient and respectful to her in every circumstance, and that your manners will be such to engage her afflictions. This is to an 11-year-old.
So I like this from Sherry, and this is so perfect. Thank you. She says, today we would say that this is make me proud by doing what you know is right.
Oh, that's good.
I love that. And then she also says back to with Washington taking the other wives and kind of treating them the same way. She says what Washington did was biblical, an eye for an eye. That's a good point.
So just to give you a little idea of Jefferson's family, Martha's, Martha Jefferson Randolph was only 10 years old when her mother died. And this is Patsy. And Patsy would continue to fulfill the role of companion, as we've talked about, even while Jefferson was, all over the place. As a teenage girl, she accompanied him to Paris while he served as minister to France. And as an adult, she served as his hostess at the president's house in Washington, D.C. Following her father's retirement to Monticello, she and her husband lived with him there, and she took on the responsibility of supervising the domestic activities of the plantation. He later called her the cherished companion of my early life and nurse of my age. So obviously at some point she started to comply. Martha's sister Maria, called Polly as a child, was sent away to live with her aunt, Elizabeth Wales Epps. Following her mother's death, Polly became very attached to the family at Eppington. And when Jefferson arranged for the 8-year-old to join him and Martha in Paris, she said, I don't want to go to France. I want to stay with Aunt Epps. Upon her arrival in England, Polly lived briefly with Abigail and John Adams, who were so charmed by the little girl that Mrs. Adams wrote to Jefferson that she was the favorite of everyone in the house.
Oh, wow.
In 1797, Maria married her cousin, John Wales Epps, and returned to live in Eppington. Like her mother, Maria suffered from poor health, and she died at the age of 25.
Aww.
After her death, which followed the death in infancy of 3 sisters and a brother, the grieving Jefferson wrote his friend John Page that, I have lost even the half of what I had. My evening prospects now hang on the slender thread of a single life. Perhaps I may be destined to see even this last chord of parental affection broken. He's talking about Patsy. Of Jefferson's 6 sisters, 1 moved to Kentucky and 2 died before reaching the age of 30. His other 3 sisters and his only brother lived near enough to visit Monticello. Of these, both Martha Jefferson Carr and Anne Jefferson Marks became occasional residents. Martha Jefferson Carr's husband, Dabney, has been one of Jefferson's closest friends, and the Carr marriage impressed the young Jefferson, who wrote, in a very small house with a table, half a dozen chairs, and 1 or 2 servants, Dabney is the happiest man in the universe. That is so, this guy has nothing. He married my sister, and he's so happy. After Dabney Carr's death in 1773, Jefferson took an active role to support the education of his nephews. When they were visiting Monticello, Aunt Carr and Aunt Marks must have been a great help to Jefferson's daughter, Martha Jefferson Randolph, who was raising 11 children. For Jefferson's grandchildren, however, so Patsy had 11 children. And so Jefferson got to live with 11.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So for Jefferson's grandchildren, however, the constant attention of the well-meaning aunts could be overwhelming at times. Mary once wrote her sister Virginia, Aunt Marks, would not let me drink my tea without her advice. And, well, if you've seen what Jefferson himself writes, you can see his sisters might do the same thing. Could you imagine? Those are the aunts that you always think about, right? Button your clothes and keep it. You can just see them. And their brother Ben echoed the sentiment, exclaiming, I wish Aunt Marks would let me alone. Martha and Thomas, Randolph's children, grew up to lead varied and sometimes difficult lives. Their oldest daughter, Anne Carey, was doted upon by her grandfather, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote of her as a toddler that even Socrates might ride on a stick with her without being ridiculous. As a teenager, she accompanied her mother to Washington during Jefferson's presidency. Anne and her grandfather shared a love of gardening, and after she married Charles Bankhead in 1808 and moved to Charlton on the western slope of Monticello, Jefferson wrote to her, "What is to become of our flowers?"
That's adorable.
The grandfather.
Yeah.
He loved. So I don't have people in my life that act like this. You know, we have this thing, grandparents don't have aunts and uncles that act like that. Like, that's kind of normal. But you know what? It comes out of a Christian society, which is why I encourage Christian society and not OnlyFans and not meme coins and not all this stuff, because you don't have this depth of love. Jefferson had a depth of love for his wife. so that when his wife died, he felt it, right? Anne's marriage unfortunately proved to be a troubled one and was a source of much anxiety for the entire family, and she died at the age of 35, giving birth to her fourth child. Anne's brother, Thomas Jefferson Randolph, called Jefferson, studied at the University of Pennsylvania between 1808 and 1809, where he boarded with the artist Charles Wilson Peale. Jefferson completed his studies in Richmond and later married Jane Hillins Nicholas. And the couple moved to the nearby farm of Tufton in 1817. Jefferson bore the primary burden of settling the $107,000 debt left by his grandfather. Wow. His younger brothers, James Madison Randolph and Benjamin Franklin Randolph.
Those are the greatest names ever, by the way.
Benjamin Franklin.
No, it's James Madison Randolph and Benjamin Franklin. That's how much these founding fathers were venerated by the very next generations.
So, yeah.
You feel me on this?
So, Patsy's son, Jefferson, had, his younger brothers. So, Patsy had children that she named James Madison and Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
Jefferson's
daughter
named two of her children after James Madison and Benjamin Franklin. Because she was around them. She had to see them. She had to talk to them. She served with them.
Yeah.
And she named her kids after them.
That's
like first and middle name.
I love it.
Eventually attended the University of Virginia, which had been founded by their grandfather, calling its establishment the hobby of my old age. That's what Jefferson did. Ellen Wales was in many ways the intellectual heir of her grandfather, and Jefferson once commented that Ellen and Cornelia are the severest of the students severest of the students I've ever met. They will never leave their room but to come to meals. That's Catherine.
Yeah.
Ellen called her grandfather her earliest best friend.
Stop it. Thomas Jefferson, my grandpa TJ, he's my earliest best.
He's my best friend.
My BFF.
Although well educated at Monticello, she never attended college like her brothers and remained at home, as was customary for women. In 1825, Ellen married Joseph Coolidge, a China merchant, and left Monticello for his home in Boston. Like her sister Ellen, Virginia Jefferson had a long and happy marriage. After a courtship which lasted 7 years, Virginia married Nicholas Trist, a West Point graduate, in 1824. The couple lived at Monticello, where Nicholas ultimately became Jefferson's personal secretary and one of the executors of his estate.
Wow.
The Trist eventually moved to Washington, where Nicholas pursued his diplomatic career in the State Department, included being a consul to Cuba. Virginia's brother, Meriwether Lewis Randolph.
Oh, great names. Meriwether Lewis. Again, all these greats at the time. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, she's named Virginia.
I know.
And living in Virginia. Could you name your kid Ohio?
I think it's awesome.
Ohio.
Like
Patriot is in her blood.
I know.
Right? Joined them in Washington after securing a clerkship in the State Department through Nicholas. Like his namesake Lewis, went west and became a land speculator in Arkansas. That's so great.
That's awesome.
Cornelia Jefferson and Mary Jefferson never married, and in the 1830s and 40s operated a ladies' school at the Randolph home, which was not far from Monticello. An amateur artist, Cornelia taught drawing, painting, and sculpture. I wonder where she got that from. You're going to draw. You're going to paint. Jefferson's like, here, basically, I think what he was doing is setting up the women just in case they need to support themselves or, to be something. And it worked, right? The youngest Randolph children, Septimia Ann and George Wythe, lived for a time at Tufton with their older brother Jefferson following their grandfather's death. Later, they stayed with their sister Ellen in Boston, where Septimia attended a day school. Septimia, called Tim by the family, continued her education at St. Mary's Convent School in Washington, and during this time lived with her sister Virginia. Tim visited his sister again when the Trists were living in Havana, Cuba. On this trip, she met her husband. So I just felt like that was interesting to go down and see what we had this whole article about posterity. Henry Clay saying in the U.S. Senate 1850, the Constitution of the United States was made not merely for the generation that then existed, but for posterity, unlimited, undefined, endless, perpetual posterity. And let me tell you something. They're more end timers. Unlimited, undefined, endless, perpetual posterity. James Wilson, who signed the Declaration, stated at Pennsylvania's convention to ratify the U.S. Constitution, after a period of 6,000 years has elapsed since the creation, early young Earth creationists, almost all of them were, because evolution wasn't a thing, so they were all young Earth creationists. The United States exhibit to the world the first instance of a nation assembling voluntarily and deciding calmly concerning that system of government under which they would and wish they and their posterity should live. Benjamin Franklin said, I have so much faith in the general government of the world of Providence that I can hardly conceive a transaction of such momentous importance to the welfare of millions now existing and to exist in the posterity of a great nation should be suffered to pass without being in some degree influenced, guided, and governed by that omnipotent, omnipresent, beneficent ruler in whom all inferior spirits live and move and have their being.
Pause. Because don't you know that Benjamin Franklin was an agnostic? Literally, that's how they paint this dude. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin are supposed to be the least religious of all the founding fathers, of all of them.
Benjamin Franklin was known to quote like 13 scriptures in one paragraph. What's that scripture? In him I live
and move and have my being. Give me a break. Anybody wants to say our founding fathers were agnostics and non-Christians are lying to you.
All right, a couple more stories of going through some hardships. How about anybody heard of Oliver Wolcott?
No.
He was a delegate from Connecticut. Oliver Wolcott served as captain and then major general in the state militia. In 1776, he was appointed to lead 14 regiments in defense of New York City. He also commanded thousands of men in the Battle of Saratoga. Wolcott worked tirelessly to recruit the Connecticut militia, which, like the Army in general, was sorely lacking in numbers within its ranks. Let's see, we did Thomas McKean, Benjamin Franklin, a few more here from Francis Hopkins of New Jersey and William Floyd of New York. Both had their homes confiscated and used as housing by the British. Thomas Lynch Jr. was an aristocrat, rice plantation owner in South Carolina who risked his substantial fortune by signing the Declaration. His health rapidly declined and his ship was lost at sea on his way to Europe to recover. No one knows what happened to him. Died. He's gone. I think looks like Lewis Morris and Philip Livingston died in similar circumstances as to John Hart. Let's see here. We did Thomas McKean. Sorry, I'm missing where my next thing is.
Let me read a comment here from Samuel. It says, many more women back then embraced the noble characteristics to support themselves, even more so when there is a noble man providing an estate for her to flourish in. Well said. Very well said.
Lyman Hall. On the advice of General Washington, he took his wife and son and fled his Georgia home for Connecticut, where he remained for 2 years until the war's end. He returned to his property in Georgia, but he had lost most of what he had. Philip Livingston of New York was forced from residence to residence by the British armies. His first 2 homes became a British barracks and a hospital. The other 2 homes were burned to the ground. In addition to the properties he lost to the enemy, he sold several others to support the colonial war effort. So these wealthy men put their money where their mouth was, and then he died suddenly in 1778 before he could rebuild.
Wow.
He lost all his homes, lost everything, and he died. And this is our founding fathers. I would like to finish today's episode, Michelle, if you could play this Paul Harvey episode on our founding fathers so that we can get a feel of who they were and kind of end on a happy note in remembering why are we celebrating the 4th of July this week.
Americans, the how and the why of our beloved republic are so much better known and understood than the who. The United States of America was born in 1776, but it was conceived 169 years before that. The earliest settlers had watered the New World with much sweat. They had built substantial holdings for themselves, for their families. And when the time came to separate themselves from a tyranny an ocean away, at best it meant starting all over again after the ravages of war. Researching what you're about to hear gave a whole new dimension to my reverence for our nation's first citizens. All others of the world's revolutions, before and since, were initiated by men who had nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. Our founders had everything to lose and nothing to gain, except one thing. Hello, Americans. I'm Paul Harvey. You remember the cherry tree fiction. A long time after you have forgotten the more earth-shaking history-making episodes in the life of George Washington. You have misplaced in your memory the details of Ben Franklin's statesmanship, but you remember his flying a kite. Joyce Kilmer was a great military hero, but the only thing you personally recall about him is his poetic tribute to trees. Maybe of this current decade, that which will be remembered best will not be its wars and its moon rockets or its crumbling frontiers or the giants who lived and died. Maybe all that'll survive to linger in the day-by-day vocabulary of generations yet unborn may be the songs of a Memphis minstrel or the reincarnation of electric automobiles. But for any eve of the 4th of July, I, Paul Harvey, do herewith bequeath unto you something to remember. You may not be able to quote one line from the Declaration of Independence at this moment. Henceforth, you'll always be able to quote at least one line. It's in the last paragraph where you will recall when I remind you. It says, "We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." In the Pennsylvania State House that's now called Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the best men from each of the colonies sat down together. This was a very fortunate hour in our nation's history, one of those rare occasions in the lives of men when we had greatness to spare. These were men of means, well-educated. 24 were lawyers and jurists. 9 were farmers, owners of large plantations. On June 11, a committee sat down to draw up a Declaration of Independence. We were going to tell the British fatherland no more rule by redcoats. Below the dam of ruthless foreign rule, the stream of freedom was running shallow and muddy, and we were going to light a fuse to dynamite that dam. This pact, as Burke later put it, was a partnership between the living and the dead and the yet unborn. There was no bigotry, there was no demagoguery in this group. All had shared hardships. Jefferson finished a draft of the document in 17 days. Congress adopted it in July, and so much is familiar history. But now, King George III had denounced all rebels in America as traitors. Punishment for treason was hanging. The names now so familiar to you from the several signatures on that Declaration of Independence, the names were kept secret for 6 months, for each knew the full meaning of that magnificent last paragraph in which his signature pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. 56 men placed their names beneath that pledge. 56 men knew when they signed that they were risking everything. They knew if they won this fight, the best they could expect would be years of hardship in a struggling nation. And if they lost, they'd face a hangman's rope. But they signed the pledge. And here is the documented fate of that gallant 56. Carter Braxton of Virginia, wealthy planter, trader, saw his ships swept from the seas. To pay his debts, he lost his home and all of his properties and died in rags. Thomas Lynch, Jr., who signed that pledge, was a third-generation rice grower, aristocrat, large plantation owner. After he signed, his health failed. His wife and he set out for France to regain his failing health. Their ship never got to France, was never heard from again. Thomas McKean of Delaware was so harassed by the enemy that he was forced to move his family 5 times in 5 months. He served in Congress without pay, his family in poverty and in hiding. Vandals looted the properties of Ellery and Clymer and Hall and Gwinnett and Walton and Hayward and Rutledge and Middleton. Thomas Nelson, Jr. of Virginia, raised $2 million on his own signature to provision our allies, the French fleet. After the war, he personally paid back the loans, wiped out his entire estate, and he was never reimbursed by his government. In the final battle for Yorktown, Nelson urged General Washington to fire on Nelson's own home, which was occupied by Cornwallis. It was destroyed. Thomas Nelson, Jr. had pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. The Hessians seized the home of Francis Hopkinson of New Jersey. Francis Lewis had his home and everything destroyed, his wife imprisoned. She died within a few months. Richard Stockton, who signed that declaration, was captured, mistreated, his health broken to the extent that he died at 51. His estate was pillaged. Thomas Hayward, Jr. was captured when Charleston fell. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside while she was dying.
We talked about that.
Their 13 children fled in all directions for their lives. His fields and grist mill were laid waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and caves and returned home after the war to find his wife dead, his children gone, his properties gone, and he died a few weeks later of exhaustion and a broken heart. Lewis Morris saw his land destroyed, his family scattered. Philip Livingston died within a few months from the hardships of the war. John Hancock, history remembers best due to a quirk of fate rather than anything he stood for. That great sweeping signature attesting to his vanity towers over the others. One of the wealthiest men in New England. And yet he stood outside Boston one terrible night of the war. And he said, "Burn Boston, though it makes John Hancock a beggar, if the public good requires it." So he, too, lived up to the pledge. Of the 56, few were long to survive. 5 were captured by the British and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes from Rhode Island to Charleston sacked, looted, occupied by the enemy, or burned. 2 lost their sons in the army. 1 had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 died in the war from its hardships or from its more merciful bullets. I don't know what impression you had of the men who met that summer in Philadelphia. But I think it's important that we remember this about them. They were not poor men. They were not wild-eyed pirates. These were men of means. They were rich men, most of them, and had enjoyed much ease and luxury in their personal living. Not hungry men, certainly not terrorists, not irresponsible malcontents, not fanatical incendiaries. These men were prosperous men, wealthy landowners. They were substantially secure in their prosperity. They had everything to lose. But they considered liberty, and this is as much as I shall say of it. They had learned that liberty is so much more important than security, that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And they fulfilled their pledge. They paid the price, and freedom was born.
Okay, that was really awesome. You should just like download that and upload it by itself. You know, as Paul Harvey was talking there, and I'm just, you know, you try to put yourself in the shoes of, you know, of these people, and, you know, it hits me. And, you know, if you guys didn't get a chance to listen to my talk at the No Fear conference back in November of last year, the year before last.
Yeah.
Was it just last year? Yeah, it was just last year. The Lord laid on my heart to talk about martyrs. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I won't get into the actual martyrs, but at that time, I had you know, kind of one of the most life-changing experiences in my personal walk with God, which was just like, man, like I have yet to fight. I've yet begun to fight. I have yet to sacrifice anything for my faith, even though I've gone through a lot of trials and I've gone through a lot of hardships, and, you know, we've had our YouTube channels taken down, and, you know, we've had the threat of our home taken out from underneath of us, and the threat of being told that we can't live the way that our founding fathers lived, in the sense that we can't keep our farm animals and all of that. Like, we've gone through a lot of trials. We've gone through a lot of hardships. You know, my mom almost died twice last year, and I've sacrificed 20 years of my life to be a caregiver. All of these things are wonderful, and I praise God for the opportunity to be able to sacrifice my life in these ways. But I've done nothing in comparison to what our founding fathers went through. Or I dare say, obviously, the disciples or the apostles in the early church. And the martyrs, you know, in Fox's Book of Martyrs. And so I think about that when I think about our founding fathers, and not just the founding fathers. So we got the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, which I don't even think George Washington is on there. There's several of our favorites that aren't even on there because they weren't there. They would have signed it, but they weren't there. And so there's more people that had suffered as a consequence of declaring the independence of this great nation. And I don't know if you talked about this when I walked away, because I was working on the pressure canner upstairs, pressure cooker, but Nathan Hale comes to mind. Nathan Hale is the most famous for, right before he was executed during the Revolutionary War, as having said something like this: I regret that I have but one life to live, one life to give for my country. And as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, you know, we are surrounded, and I kind of want to turn the camera. I don't like to do this very often because it's going to mess us up. Let's see if I can turn it a little bit. There's at least one. There's several of those pictures like that of George Washington. We've got several of those up here. I'm surrounded by the Mayflower Compact on one side.
Well, George Washington crossing the Delaware.
George Washington crossing the Delaware. Patrick Henry, John Adams, George Washington, and so we've got the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence framed, and I'm surrounded in our studio, which we're very privileged to have an awesome studio like this. But we've sacrificed a corner of our life and basement to have it. But by the foundation of our nation and by our founding fathers. And I'm going to be honest, just like you guys, I know a lot of you guys feel the same way in your day in and day out life. Like, man, I'm giving up so much to obey God. We're not giving up enough. Like, I just mean that genuinely. Like, I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. And then he was executed, by the way. He was supposed to be a spy on British troops, and he was caught, and then he was executed, and then he was hanged. And right before he was hung, that's essentially what he said. And I don't think that we have that attitude. I mean, we have first world problems. And so, you know, when I did my righteous rant, I don't want to bring this back to Trump, but forgive me, against Christians that want to vote for Trump, and this was in 2016, I think, that I did it. I remember very specifically trying to say, but this dude is not a founding father. Now, you can say that none of the presidents over the last 100 years have been one, and I would probably agree with you. Okay? But what's wrong with me wanting to have a president that has the heart of a founding father? Like, why is that? Why?
Is that too much?
Is it too much to ask to want a man that's willing to lay down his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor for our country? And some of you may say, Michelle, he was shot at. You know, he was willing to lay down his life, and he got back up and he said, fight, fight, fight. I'm sorry. I don't hear from him. I regret that I have but one life to give up for my country. And it's not just Donald Trump that I'm calling out. I can call out every single politician in Congress or Senate right now. Right? And I'm just so inspired by, I'm not trying to bring it back to something negative. I actually, when I listen to this and I listen to that amazing, you know, it was a 4th of July Eve by Paul Harvey there. When I listen to that, I'm inspired. When I listen to the quotes of our founding fathers, I'm inspired to do better, to be better, to live better, to ask God, do I have another life that I can give for my country? Like, what can I do? And so at the end of tonight's show, I don't know what else Leah has, but I would say this after, you know, covering all of these things here tonight and the healing for the fractured soul. And I think a lot of times we get so caught up in our brokenness, our past, the things that have happened to us. And by all means, we need to have those things healed so that we can function properly to be able to take back our country for Jesus. But I want you guys to feel encouraged that we have every opportunity to do something great for the kingdom of God, just like our founding fathers. It's not that because I find myself in this situation where it's like, man, I just wish I was living during our founding era and I could do what they do. We're living in our own time that's not as romanticized as that, but it is every bit as important. And there are so many names, like Leah's like, have you heard of this person? Have you heard of this person? And I'm like, I consider myself a founding era history, at least novice, not novice, that's not the right word, but hobbyist, right? And there's so many of these names that I don't know. And these are people that gave up everything for our nation, and they didn't do it for a name. They didn't do it so that people would know who they were. They just did it because it was the right thing to do, because they wanted a better place for their kids. They wanted a better place for the next generations to follow, of which they believed that there would be many, many, many more generations to go. And so what I take away from tonight is just such a joy and an excitement of, you know what? What are my problems in comparison? Like, and I mean that genuinely, and I use this a lot to get through my days. But now I've got even more ammunition against my own flesh. And that is this. I have done nothing in comparison to these men. And they have given up everything. They have sacrificed everything. What more can I give? And I go back to if you guys saw the movie Hacksaw Ridge with the conscientious objector in World War I or II?
Two, I think it's
Was
two.
it two? I thought it was just one.
I can't remember.
And he doesn't carry a gun. And he finds himself in a situation where he's got to help get these men off of this big, not really a mountain. What was it? Like a ridge? Well, it's ridge. It's a ridge.
Yeah.
And he's carrying them. And I don't know how many he got, and we could look this up, how many men he was able to save.
Yeah.
And he carried them to be lowered down. And he would say, God, help me get one more. God, help me get one more. God, help me get one more. And I think of that all the time. Like I really do. And I'm so thankful for that movie, if I'm being honest, because it causes me to go, God, please help me get one more. So like when I'm exhausted and I'm tired and I don't want to do another video, or, because guys, as much as we love coming to you, the tech part of this is so exhausting, and doing a video, even when I want to do my life, I don't want to record my life. So there's a ton of videos that we don't do that we could do because I'm just so exhausted from doing videos. But then we get messages like an email like I got last night. And I hope it's okay.
Maybe I need to ask permission before we share.
Okay,
it.
I'm gonna ask permission because I do want to share this story. But when you guys share your stories with us of life-changing things that have happened to you because of watching Resistance Chicks, sometimes I cry because we live such a life, it's so exhausting to do what we do. And then to hear from you guys a story where your lives were changed just because of maybe one message. Maybe it's multiple messages. And I'm not saying that it's like, oh, I want to hear the accolades or I want to hear the praise. I just need to know that we're doing something that's not, we're not just speaking into the wind. Are we actually making a difference? Because, the difference between having a physical church and an online church, which is what I count you guys as, is that we don't always get to see, and we've touched thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lives, and we're never going to hear those stories until we get to heaven. And I know that there are so many people that I can say the same thing about, that they have touched my lives that I've never been able to tell them.
Yeah.
And so our founding fathers have done things that have touched millions and millions of lives. And it's not, and I look forward to getting to heaven. I don't know what heaven's going to be like exactly, but I sure as shooting would love to be able to talk to some of these men and to hear their stories and to hear the unsung stories. Like, tell me your story. Like, I want to know what you did during the foundation of our nation. And I would love to talk to these unsung heroes and to thank them for what they were willing to give up and willing to sacrifice. And so that's what I would say to you guys right now in 2025. There's no sacrifice that's going to go unrewarded if you're doing it for the kingdom of God. If you're doing it because God has called you to live a way that is separate from the world's system. If you're doing that and you're sacrificing what the world would give you, there are rewards for you. And the Bible says this both in this life and in the life to come. But here's the very interesting thing. You don't do it for the rewards. You do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because as a Christian, the only thing that we should really and truly desire is to expand the kingdom of God and to have that mindset that says, I regret that I only have one life to give. And you could say for your country, or you can say for the kingdom of God, and that's how these people were able to give up their lives, because they knew that they were doing it for a kingdom afar off, that heavenly kingdom. So Barry says, there is also another American Constitution that many Americans don't know about. It's actually in the UK National Archives. From what I actually understand, it is one of the original draughts of the Constitution. It's held in the British Library, London. Michelle, Leah, both of you girls have been given your angel wings already here on earth because of your shows and beliefs. That's awesome. From the guy that's says he's an agnostic or atheist, which we know that Barry, we all know it. We watch it. We watch you every week. One day we will be in heaven with you because you will have accepted
Jesus. So guys,
Jesus.
I hope that you've enjoyed tonight's episode. Michelle has her sale going on.
I do have a sale going on. And I'll play my little Founding Fathers ad at the end. I played it at the beginning because you had said to do that. And it was and the only reason why I really did it was because it had super cool music.
I love the super cool music.
So we have our 4th of July sale going on right now for the shop.resistancechicks.com. 10% off if you use promo code 1776. I don't know why I didn't download the banner, but the banner is available on resistancechicks.com and on shop.resistancechicks.com. You'll see it there, and I put the Founding Fathers there, shamelessly using them for our sale because we're honoring them. And so anyway, before I get to some of our products, I do want to remind you guys one more time, tomorrow night is going to be our 100th episode of Revelation Red Pill. And our big surprise is that we're going to have Corey Gray back on, which Leah and I are very excited to bring him back. And I know that you guys will be excited to have him back on with us. And we're going to cover a lot of different things. Please come with your questions. And we now have on shop.resistancechicks.com the diplomas, which I can, I think I have one of those downloaded here. No, I don't, not for here. Which I can take you to shop.resistancechicks.com to show you guys how to get there, to get the diploma. I have a couple of things that I need to tell you about them. You can thank Dentist Sherry for ruining it for everyone, or we might say making it better for everyone. Because of her, I wanted to have the embossed gold star, the custom Resistance Chicks thing, the embosser, right? And so I ordered one, but it's going to take a minute to get here. So while you may order your, hang on, these are going to, there we go. While you may order your diploma, let's put it in the search bar because for some reason it's not in the drop down menu. Diploma. There we go. Come on. There it'll go. There it is. You may order it, but it's not going to ship until those come. Now, if you make an order with other things, please note in the thing, in the checkout that gives you an option for a note. Please give me a note. Whether you want me to hold your whole order, okay, until the little sticker comes, or you want me to mail your embossed sticker separate. Okay, those are your two choices. I can either hold your whole order and mail it when the embossed sticker comes, or I'm going to send your diploma early with your whole order. Okay, that's how that's going to work. That'll save you on shipping. Okay, otherwise you'd have to make two separate orders. You have to pay shipping twice, and I don't want you guys to have to do that. I did make a little note that we did have to actually put a price. I said they were going to be free. I had to put a price of $5 because the cost of making the diploma and the shipping is a little bit more than our standard shipping, which is $9.95 to ship these in their little cardboard things. And so we added a $5 fee. We are making no money on this, okay? No money whatsoever, but it is going to be a $5 thing. So what I want you guys to do is go here and choose your course level, either the 50 episodes or the 100 episodes. Do you see that? So in the drop-down menu, you add it to your cart, and then please in the notes section, whether you are ordering this for yourself or you are ordering it for someone else, put the proper spelling of the person's name. I chose a funny name, Christian Faith. I thought that was kind of cute and kitschy. That's just an example. Your name will go there, okay? But we want to make sure that the spelling is correct. So make sure that that's in the note section if you are ordering your diploma. Now, Nana Yaffa you make such a great point. You said you'd only missed 2 episodes. I'm going to declare you officially as having seen all 100 episodes. So please click on the 100 episodes. I put this, please read all of the information, scroll down and go to the description, read all of this before you make your order so that you understand all of the things. Okay. But if you tuned in to 50 episodes of Revelation Red Pill, that means you've done 150 hours. Okay. That's the equivalent of like 2 college credits. It's huge. If you've tuned into almost 100 episodes, that's the equivalent of almost 4 college credits, because that's almost 300 hours, okay, of theological studies. And I'm so proud of each and every single one of you. This has been a very, very long time in the making. So I'm super excited about that. So since we have the sale going on, very interestingly enough, your 10% will work on that. You'll save 50 cents on that, because it takes off your whole order. But please remember that everything that we have on the store is all natural. It is made here in the house. It is loved. It is prayed over. It is designed to not just make amazing products, but to actually heal your body and to heal your endocrine system. Now, Leah said that we weren't emphasizing the aromatherapy eye pillows enough. She's like, Michelle, I don't know that people know what they are. So we're still doing our sale. Buy 2 or more, you save $10 a piece on these, which is really amazing. They have lavender and flaxseed in them. You can heat them in the microwave or you can cool them in the freezer, and they'll stay warm or cool for about an hour, which is awesome. I use mine. I just keep it on my nightstand and I use it to fall asleep every single night. Now, the materials that my favorite are the satins, which I think there's a couple down there. The satins are the original, the OG, original gangster. I know they smell amazing. I can't fall asleep without them now. I use it every night. You just kind of wake up and it's like next to you because it's falling off of your head. But the lavender inside helps you to fall asleep. There's something about the weight of the flaxseed. It's just amazing. It's not like a rice bag, even though those are great. Shauna had made me one, and I still use that for my menstrual cramps. But as a matter of fact, if I'm going to be out and about, this tiny one I'll just stick in my yoga pants. It's probably way too much TMI, but I'll heat it up. And if I'm really struggling that day, this really, really helps me. So these are on sale right now. I have probably sold about between 1,500 and 2,000 of these over the years when we used to do craft shows. Very, very popular. People would come back year after year. So please try them out. The sale that you're going to be saving, the 10% works on top of that. Okay. So I wanted to emphasize that as we're going into this sale that's going to last until the 10th. Last but not least, please remember that these Armor of God products, I designed them for men, and men, by all means, please get them. You will not be sorry. But this beard oil, ladies, you know what Leah said to me yesterday? She said, Michelle, I want to buy one. Do I get a discount? Because I took the one out of the bathroom to use on Uncle Jack's face, which has all but cleared up his psoriasis. He had really, really bad psoriasis. I mean, his face was flaking, and now his face looks like $1 million because we've been putting this on his face every single day. And so Leah misses it because the one that I had in the bathroom that we were using on our faces every single day is gone. I was using it on like razor burn and stuff like that on my legs and on my armpits. I know, again, TMI, but this is real deal. So ladies, by all means, all of the Armor of God stuff can be used by women. I love the smell, and it's, I just forget what it smells like until I smell it again. And it's just, it blows me away. But men, by all means, please don't think that because I'm pushing this for the ladies that it's going to smell like a lady's product. It does not. It's a very, very manly smell. It's designed to boost testosterone and to support your testosterone system, but it doesn't mess up your hormones if you're women. It really just helps to balance your hormones to what they should be at. So we do have the Armor of God in different sets. So you save more if you buy them in the sets. And then of course, on top of that, you still get 10% on that. So that sale is going from now until July 10th. We decided to make all of our sales go like the weekend before a holiday until the Thursday afterwards. That way we can talk about it several times on the shows. And everybody has an opportunity, whether maybe you like to tune into Healing for the Fractured Soul, or you like to tune into the Sunday show. Maybe you're just like a 1 show a week person. That way it hits all the different shows. So I'm super excited about the July 4th sale because I love sending you guys products. I love writing you little notes. And most importantly, I love praying over the products before they go out. That's not because I want you guys to buy prayers. Please, by all means, that's the anti-reason to buy them. I'm just letting you know why I'm so passionate about it, because we've been doing this program since 2017. And we have had millions of people come through Resistance Chicks. So I don't know a million of you. Like, I don't know these people. Like, I don't know most of you. Okay. And so what this does is it makes it so that we can know you. The same thing when you send us your letters. I love it when you send us your letters. So by all means, please feel free to use our P.O. Box 107 Milford, Ohio 45150. And if you do send your letters, we will read them on air unless otherwise noted, like put on the outside of the envelope. Do not read on air if you don't want us to read it on air.
Yeah.
But it makes it so that we can touch you and we can be a part of you.
We don't know what time we'll be here on Friday. But we'll be here tomorrow, hopefully around.
We will be here tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Corey Gray for our 100th episode of Revelation Red Pill, which I'm super excited about. I don't know whether Little Leah is going to do a show on Thursday, but on Friday, we do hope to do a headline news program. Now, Leah, you kind of did the Founding Fathers show that I was going to have you do on Friday tonight. So does that mean
there's a lot?
You're going to do more? We'll do the news.
Fathers.
We still have some news
we'll
stuff
just
to
be
do.
led by the Holy Spirit. I don't know if we're just do Founding Fathers because I get I get tired with the news. So
I do too. It's very refreshing. And that Paul Harvey clip was like super, super, super great. Samuel says Facebook just updated and kicked us off. Well, that stinks. Eric Mathis says, really great show. God bless you all. Hi, Eric. It's good to see you. Say hi to the wife and kids for us. Barry says, Michelle, I have to tell you, your body butter pot you sent me is also good on sunburns too, by the way. It soothes me. It's great stuff. That's awesome. Thank you for saying that, Barry. And you know what? Barry lives in the UK. How does Barry have some of our products? Because we ship worldwide. So if you would like to purchase our products and your country does not show up as an option for us to ship to, let me know and I will make it so. But right now we have shipped to Puerto Rico. We have shipped to the UK twice, and we have shipped to Canada once. So no matter where you live in this world, we are willing to ship to you. So let us know if you live in a country and you would like to try the Resistance Chicks products. I would love to add you to the list of countries that we have shipped to. Okay, we'll see you guys next time right here from resistancechicks.com. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. We love you guys. God loves you. God bless. And I'm going to end with our ad because I can and because the music is super awesome and it makes me happy and it makes me feel like very patriotic. And I'm looking forward to bringing more patriotism to you guys on Friday. Take care and God bless.